on YouTube here. Okay, so we're live on YouTube also. For the ones on YouTube, thank you for joining. Again, this is episode 101. Please help support my work by subscribing to all my channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube. I have Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. I also have Patreon and X channels. I have 2 X channels. I have GETTR, so follow me there. You can follow me on Podomatic, Apple Podcast. My website has audio recordings, so you can listen to them. You can download them if you want, and help support my work by sharing the links, asking your social media to follow me, making sure you subscribe to all the channels, and help support my work by donating or purchasing the products. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. You can go on my website. On the homepage, you can donate. You can click the link for Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. You can be a paid member to my Patreon channel. Link is in the description of this video. And it's through the donations that allow me to be able to publish thousands of videos for free about current events, international policy, and global events, economics, finance, and how to improve your health and wellness, and some scientific discoveries and my take on certain scientific endeavors. But please subscribe. Please help support my work. All right. There's certain things that I say that are censored on YouTube, and that's the reason why it's so important to subscribe to all my channels. Again, I have 4 channels on YouTube: Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. We're live streaming on Rumble. We're live streaming on YouTube. I'm going to be setting up X Spaces for the call-in. Please join. This is supposed to be interactive. I'm going to be going to the different videos. Right now, there's commercial break on YouTube. So I'd like to just plug just a couple products before we start. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver soaps. I have in stock right now the charcoal tea tree. Get a couple bars for your household. It's very high quality. So something that I use. It's way better than the chemical laden soaps that you would get at the grocery store. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get a few bars for your household. It's very high quality. Use discount 5, and you get $5 off. All right. With that said, let's go to Bloomberg. Markets have not opened up yet. The markets will be opening up in a little bit less than 30 minutes.
A cloud. I still don't have a clue what it is.
You're in the cloud, Tom. So you're in the cloud. So don't worry about it.
Where are the data centers?
They're all like, I'd say there's a lot in New Jersey.
Really, the data centers in New Jersey?
Data centers, they're everywhere. But apparently that's a bottleneck, getting these data centers.
The constraint.
Yeah, that's what we hear from Microsoft and some others.
I find it hilarious that that's a bad thing.
You got to power those things. So how do you power them?
I'm on YouTube live chat. George Strait is great, and Vince Gill for everyone outside of Texas. Okay. I think they're asking for some country. I got to do Brooks and Dunn here one of these days. Well, say good morning, everyone. Futures up 15. Good morning across the nation on your commute. Good morning, Canada, as we get to David Rosenberg in a minute. On YouTube, stunned at the response internationally on YouTube. We don't care about tariffs. There's no tariff on Bloomberg surveillance on YouTube. Subscribe. The conduit is Bloomberg Podcasts.
Yep.
When they first said it, I'm like, what? And now with Google mentioning podcasts 3 times in their conference call, It makes sense.
It's a business. It's a real business.
It's
It's a
absolutely.
great business, and Bloomberg's all over it.
Good morning. Thank you for signing up on Bloomberg Podcast. It builds up each and every day. Let's go to the Interactive Broker Studios, the Bloomberg Business Flash. Listen, Mateo.
And we've got a slight lift to the markets this morning. Busy earnings day before the open, but also you have Amazon after the close with a close watch on its cloud service business. We'll start with NASDAQ futures. A little change up about 6 points. Dow futures up 0.1%, 74 points. S&P futures up 0.2% or 15 points. The 2-year yield 4.20%. That's up 2 basis points. The yield on the 10-year 4.43%, and that's up 1 basis point. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, that's up about 0.2%. Want to point out the British pound down nearly 1% at 123.83 against the dollar. BOE cut interest rates a 0.25 point. To earnings, we go a nice lift for Peloton, up 18%. Cost cuts, that really helped boost profit more than expected, even though its revenue continuing to shrink. And Ford, kind of tapping the brakes, shares down 5%. It warned that profit may fall by $2 billion or more this year. Honeywell reported adjusted earnings per share beat estimates, but its forecast for 2025 profit, that fell short, so its shares down about 3%. And it also announced that it's splitting into 3 independent companies. And finally, Allstate said it expects about $1.1 billion of losses from the Los Angeles wildfires last month. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
Lisa, thanks so much. We protect the copyright of our guests. We get more calls. I think Ed Hyman and David Rosenberg, more people, send me the note, send me the note. No, get it from Rosenberg Research up in Toronto. At 1 p.m. this afternoon, a huge interview. Our Saleha Mosin, just definitive on Treasury building. She's been in the cash room at the Treasury more times than I have. She speaks with the Secretary of Treasury. David Rosenberg leads his note this morning with comments on the Secretary of Treasury. David, just to begin with, can the Secretary of Treasury single-handedly lower the 10-year yield?
No, 1 word or less.
There you go. So what do you expect to hear from our Secretary of the Treasury? What would you like to hear from the Secretary?
Well, the assumption is that that Besson has any real influence on the president. I think that we don't really know the answer to that, but we know that Donald Trump is going to do what he wants to do. So it really comes down to what he says and ultimately what he does and what you think his objectives are. But to me, the most important voice by far is what the president has to say. I don't think Scott Besson has the same degree of influence on Trump, say, that Bob Rubin may have had on Bill Clinton back in the day. So, I have tremendous respect for the Treasury Secretary, but I question just how much influence he really has.
We're going to get to this with David Rosenberg. I did a panel with him up in Toronto that was like riveting on the politics of Canada. And I've been reading the Globe and Mail, David Shriman, and others up there. I want to get to that in a moment. You have a headline, David Rosenberg, that's classic David, and it's the bond bullion barbell outpaces the equity market. To me, that's fascinating. Describe the bond bullion barbell.
Well, it's the barbell or the blended return between the 2 safe havens, which are treasuries and gold, which combined have generated a total return of around 6% so far this year. The S&P 500 total return is 4.5%. And just a reminder to people out there who have ice in their veins and the risk-on momentum trade that's dominating the headlines, that actually, when you look risk for reward, combined bonds and gold have actually been a better strategy year to date, still early on, than the equity market's been. So that was basically the message, is that if you're looking for alternatives, that particular strategy is actually a great stabilizer, not just a stabilizer, but also is adding alpha to your total portfolio.
David, tomorrow here in the United States, we're going to get the non-farm payrolls here. What are you looking for? How do you think the Fed's going to kind of look at this data?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, the question is not just about non-farm payrolls, but about just the data right now in general. How much influence are they going to have? Because the Fed has already laid down the gauntlet that nothing is happening in the first half of the year. And you remember, you go back a few months ago, we had a ton of rate cuts being priced in immediately. And that's not happening because of all the Trump uncertainty. So I'm not so sure that tomorrow's number is going to have a big influence on the Fed. Of course, you know, the markets will trade around it. We just had back-to-back months, you know, the new Powell inflation indicator is no longer, you know, the super core, you know, the CPI X energy X shelter. It's the market-based core PC deflator, which he's discussed several times. And that metric has come in at 0.1% each of the past 2 months. And I think with all the Trump uncertainty, especially regarding tariffs, and you could argue also fiscal policy, although right now fiscal policy is tightening on the spending side, so it's really mostly about tariffs. The Fed will still be talking about cutting rates right now when you're talking about what's the trend in the market-based core PC deflator. You know, it's running now on a 3 and 6 month basis, right at the 2% target. And this has become Powell's favorite indicator. But they're actually signaling that they're on hold indefinitely. And that's because of all the policy uncertainty that we have in front of us. And we have to wait for that clarity to come to the fore whenever it does come to the fore. But the Fed right now is signaling nothing's going on rate-wise until the summer. So tomorrow's number, I don't think is going to bear a lot unless, you know, we're going to get revisions to the household survey and the payroll survey. They'll probably show some convergence. We're going to get, you know, the numbers coming off that new population count based on the immigration file or the previous movement immigration. So the question for me is going to be the big number tomorrow, actually, after we all look at the non-farm payroll headline and the revisions, is how did this affect the unemployment rate? Right. And so insofar as that nudges the unemployment rate up, tells the Fed there's more slack than they thought, and that could, you know, maybe bring marginally the date forward for when they might start cutting interest rates again. But to me, nothing much beyond that.
David, I know in your note this morning you talk about the U.S. trade deficit and a big dent to U.S. growth coming from the widening trade deficit. You're focused on the trade deficit, but I don't think the folks in Congress are. How do you think about the U.S. trade deficit?
Well, I'm looking more at the components. Like we've had a big decline in exports in December, and they're down precipitously through the past 4 months. And what that's telling me is one thing is about the impact of the super strong U.S. dollar. People, I don't think, are recognizing just how much financial conditions in the U.S. have tightened over the course of the past few months. And on top of that, it's also telling me that just how weak the global economy is right now, that we're seeing the export side really starting to not just decelerate, but now contract. So of course it's going to lead to fourth quarter GDP downward revisions to what we already saw from the Commerce Department. But it's telling us something about the state of the global economy, both in Asia and Europe, that it's coming back to hit home in terms of the reduction in exports. And exports have a very powerful multiplier impact on the rest of the industrial sector. And you're right, nobody else is talking about it. So I thought, okay, I guess I'll put it in that market.
David Rosenberg with us. We continue with Rosenberg Research Toronto. Thrilled that he's with us this morning. Futures up 16. They advance across the arc of the morning. You're 19 minutes away from a market open. We welcome all of you on a commute across the nation.
All right, so the S&P 500 futures, 6,101. Thank you for joining the ones that are watching the stream on Rumble and YouTube. I have set up the X Spaces call-in. You can just listen in, or you can actually ask a question. It's up to you. It's a great way to interact with the show. Put in your questions in the chat if you would like me to respond to something. But it's supposed to be interactive. The show is supposed to be interactive. I want your opinion. So thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. All right, let's go back to Bloomberg here for a sec here.
Republicans versus Democrats.
Well, another great question. You know, it's a parliamentary system here.
But
It's not as fragmented as it is over in Europe. There's really three main parties, and actually, for the past several years, because the Liberals didn't have a majority, the Justin Trudeau Liberals had to team up with the Socialist NDP party to be able to, well, not have a majority, but have a coalition so that there wouldn't be a non-confidence vote. A few months ago, that coalition broke, and now, of course, we're in a leadership race, and Parliament is closed right now, and then we'll have probably an election sometime, I would expect, during the spring. So it's not as fragmented. I don't think that, unless we have a minority government, we're not going to have a coalition. If the polls are accurate right now, I'm not so sure that they are, because we don't know who's going to be leading the Liberal Party. Mark Carney being an outsider and being hailed, of course, as having all these tremendous global economic and financial credentials, and he's not going to be tainted by the past number of years of failed Liberal policies. He'll be a fresh face. I would expect that if we have this conversation a couple of months from now, Tom, that those polls are going to narrow in if Carney wins the Liberal leadership race, which I think he probably will at this point. But if the election was held today, based on those polls, it would be a Brian Mulroney-like landslide majority.
Interesting.
I wouldn't extrapolate that, because if Carney emerges victorious, he's going to pack a very powerful punch.
Do you or anyone have any idea what happens? Was it 27 days? Like it's a 30-day tariff?
Sure.
David, do you have any idea what happens in 27 days?
Well, I don't think the tariffs are going to be coming, notwithstanding the quotes 30-day reprieve, because we have to look at the facts that are presented in front of us. You know, last Friday at the White House, when asked if there was any chance that the tariffs on Canada and Mexico would be averted, he said, no, not a chance, they're a done deal. And then one phone call on Monday with Mexico and 2 in Canada. Next thing you know, well, no, we got a 30-day reprieve. So remember, he changed his mind as to when he was going to level the tariffs. He still has the power to do that. And so the question becomes why? Because when Mexico, let's talk about Canada. What did Canada really do? Like, what did we do? What, like a fentanyl czar? Like, what is that? We'll have a few helicopters and drones looking over the border, the $1.3 billion of more border security and enforcement. Justin Trudeau repledged that quite a while ago. So, you know, what really changed? What really changed is that Canada and Mexico moved a little bit, and now Donald Trump can once again claim a win to the U.S. general public. He got a win from Canada, got a win from Mexico, got a win from Colombia, got a win from Panama. So he's just collecting all these wins. Of course, I think that they're inflated, but I think that the bottom line here is that it comes back to the initial question about Scott Besson, about, you know, that we want to get inflation down. And we want to get this. So to answer the question, can he directly get the 10-year note yield down? Well, not directly, but indirectly. You know, forego all the tax stimulus and keep your focus on the spending restraint right now. Well, that's a help. And anything you can do to reduce inflation expectations, well, tell me that's not going to bring down the 10-year Treasury note yield. So certainly, you know, he can have an influence from a fiscal policy standpoint. But you have to ask yourself the question, why did Trump change his mind? And why do I think he was never taken seriously or literally? He campaigned on a lot of things, but the biggest campaign message was he was going to unwind the rest of all the Biden inflation. He was going to bring gasoline and grocery prices down, didn't you know? Well, how are you going to do that and then put a tariff on Mexico, which supplies 60% of U.S. food imports, or 30%? Canada supplies 60% of oil imports. There would be a massive inflation shock, even temporarily, and that would work against his objectives. So as I think about it, and I wasted too much time on the weekend worrying and writing about it, it was never going to happen. It didn't happen, and I still have Canadians here still on tenterhooks about what's going to happen on March 1st. I'm telling them he's not going to do it. You know, maybe he'll get more concessions and show that I got more wins, but it's to me basically, you know, Justin Trudeau had a chance to actually call Trump bluff, but he didn't. But no, I don't think. I think that if anything is close to 0% probability, I do not think the tariffs are coming in either country, because it's going to work against. It's going to work against Trump's legacy.
I got to squeeze this in 1 minute. David, one of the reasons I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan is at gunpoint, we had a family that we knew called the Great Britons. And we would go up to the Thousand Islands of 2 lifetimes ago, David Rosenberg. And there was this relationship between America and Canada wrapped around the St. Lawrence Seaway and Gananoque up to Montreal. Is that gone?
Well, I wouldn't say it's gone, but, you know, it's been impaired, at least, for now. I don't like the fact that, you know, we're booing, you know, national anthems. I mean, this is more about, you know, half the US population voted against Trump. Like, what are you booing against? It's really about the president, so boo the president. But the reality is that, you know, politics will come, politics will go. I wouldn't, you know, extrapolate this into the future. But right now, I gotta say, Canadians, generally speaking, and of course I live in Toronto, they're feeling really hurt by what's happened. And the thing is that I don't think the tariffs are going through, but the die's been cast and the damage is done. By the way, Tom, not just here, but in the US too, because of the uncertainty that's being implemented into not just—
I don't really care what the Canadians think. The reason why, our tool and die industry in the United States, especially in Detroit, was decimated because of NAFTA. Decimated. And what it was transnational capitalists and big corporations that were playing the currency game because the Canadian dollar was cheaper than the US dollar. So tool and die makers in Detroit could not compete with the price pressure from Windsor, Canada. So I don't fucking care about Canada. Sorry, you decimated the tool and die industry, and that was in the late 90s. And then you had George Bush Jr. giving favorable status to China for trade, and the Walmart family pushing manufacturing over so they could sell you cheap goods while they were decimating the manufacturing base in the United States. That's what fucking went on. That's what happened from 1999 all the way to modern day. And then Trump, you know, wakes up, you know, as president, and he basically says, this is just a total ripoff. People don't understand. Innovation is through making stuff. If you don't make stuff, you can't innovate. You can't innovate just through design. You gotta make stuff, because what happens is you learn the art of the product that you're making, not just the science of it. Because there's tolerances and there is, you know, there's processes that can move out of tolerance, and there's lots of things can happen in manufacturing. You got to make stuff, and then through making stuff, you learn on that you can improve the process here or there, or, you know, or reduce the time of assembly, or improve the part and make it more robust by working with the material, working with the subsystem or the system that's being made. All of that knowledge, all of that innovation is shipped over to another country. Stupid. That's absolutely stupid. The United States needs to make stuff. It's about localization, not globalization. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver soap that I have. I have it in charcoal tea tree. Get a couple bars for your household. It's a very high quality product. I have partnered up with Rainbow Herbals, and we have these deodorants in peppermint and in citrus. These deodorants are for males and females. It's very high quality, has no aluminum, no baking soda, made from natural ingredients, and it's a dual purpose product. You use it as a deodorant, but it also helps to detoxify your body. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the citrus or the peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, get a couple bars for your household. Very high quality deodorant, and it's a dual purpose. It helps to detoxify your body, and you use it as a deodorant, and it's way better than any of those chemically laden deodorants that most people use. So please go to my store, use discount 5, and you get $5 off. All right, Trump speaking right now.
And I do that despite the fact that they say I can't run again. That's the expression, sir. And somebody said, I don't think you can. Oh. No, I want to be with you regardless, and it's an honor, and yeah, it's something I've enjoyed. I actually met some very nice Democrats here. So I have. But this is a beautiful tradition that started with President Eisenhower in 1953, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. After 4 long years, really, they were very long, dark years, in my opinion. It's great to be back at the prayer breakfast, and I hope you all agree it's nice to once again have a president that shows up to the prayer breakfast. And that agrees to be interviewed for the Super Bowl. I'm doing that too. They haven't done it in so long, they forgot about it. They said, oh, but they hadn't done it in years. But I said, yeah, this morning they wanted to know, and I said, yeah, why not? What the hell? You know the way I look at it? They ask you a question and you give them an answer. It's not that hard. But they didn't show up for years, so they were almost shocked when I said, yeah, I'll do it, why not? But I want to thank our great newly confirmed Secretary of the Interior, Doug Burgum, who's fantastic, by the way, for being here this morning. I don't know is he around? Where is he? Where is he? With the lights, I can't, there you are. You are a handsome devil. He's a good-looking guy. He's got an even better-looking wife, I can tell you that. But I want to thank you and Catherine for, you've been fantastic. I knew immediately, he was running in a group of people, and I spotted him immediately. I said, that guy's a winner. He didn't get the gravitas, because to get gravitas, you have to be controversial and in many cases a horrible human being. You get a lot of gravitas that way, and he's a very good human being and very smart. But I said, he is really outstanding, and he's going to do a job with Chris Wright. Two of them, it's like a partnership with Interior and Energy. He's going to have more liquid gold coming out of the ground than anybody's ever seen before. We're going to drive the price down, and everything else is going to follow. So he's one of the really important people. He's a very, very, very great gentleman, was a fantastic governor, by the way, and really did, and sort of learned the oil business as a governor, because he made his money, made a lot of money, which I like. I like people that make money, because that means they can help us. And they always like me to put in really people that have failed. They want, please, sir, he's made too much money and he's become too successful. They want me to hire people that have totally failed to run Department of Energy. Somebody that lost all his life, I don't want to do, I just don't want to do it. I know it sounds nice, but I want to get somebody that was so successful, because we got to bring the country back, and him and Chris are going to be unbelievable. I really believe it. But I want to thank you very much for what you've gone through. He's gone through a lot too, but he was easily approved because he's an honest person. He gave a statement, they read it, they said thank you. But as well as our co-chairs, Representatives Ben Klein and Jonathan Jackson, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, fellas. Hey. Congressman Eric Burleson and visiting dignitaries from more than 120 countries. From the very beginning of our republic, America has always been a nation founded by people of faith and strengthened by the power of prayer and united by four simple but very beautiful words: in God we trust. And you all know there was a movement to get that out. I said, no, don't bring it up. Don't bring it up. I don't want to hear it. There was a movement. We don't want that, because we shouldn't be mentioning God. There was a very strong movement, just like they don't want to say Merry Christmas, but now they say it. Remember in 2016, that was a whole big part of my campaign. You're going to say Merry Christmas. Well, now they do it again. But we, I don't know if you've been watching, but we got rid of woke over the last 2 weeks. Woke is Gonzo. Despite the other side stealing hundreds of millions of dollars to promote woke. Did you see what happened yesterday where they found hundreds of millions of dollars of money was fraudulently given to newspapers and I guess Politico. I don't know, they're here. Good. I hope you're enjoying your breakfast. No, they gave money to all this out of U.S. aid, right? U.S. AID. It came out hundreds of just tremendous amounts of money, had nothing to do with anything. This is a terrible thing that was experienced, but we're catching them left and right. We're catching them.
The President of the United States speaking at the Hilton Hotel in Washington. It is a national prayer breakfast. There are two now, one in Capitol Hill. And then I've done the drive. It's more than 2 minutes. He has a little bit of red light and
Yeah, I think.
entourage coverage there to get there in 2 minutes. I think it took me 20 minutes to get up north to the Hilton Hotel. 3,000 people in attendance is a typical audience, even larger than that for the national prayer breakfast, as you mentioned, selected Democrats and Republicans in attendance this morning. Futures up 17, and the real story here in this great bull market is once again worries, angst. Paul, we came in, well, we were flat, maybe even a little red, and that sort of disappeared.
No, so we have on the economic data front, Tom, a little bit on the jobs claims, kind of generally in line with expectations. So no real big movement there. We're just kind of cross.
Market's going to be opening up in just about a minute or so.
Of the quarter, certainly. I think of the quarter, this is the big day today, Thursday.
With the Dow component Peloton reporting, also
All on top of that.
careful take of that early. But Amazon this afternoon, stay with Carol and Tim to really get a full treatment on Amazon and AWS and the cloud as well. On the currency front, thank you, Audrey Shaw-Friedman, for attendance earlier. We sort of come halfway back. We were 109 strong dollar. We go back on DXY to 107 and pretty moments ago. 108. I'm going to call it a middle tendency here, but the euro critically gives way. 103.67, and off the BOE rate cut, sterling 123.94. And to my question earlier, Paul, the real question is it a race to the bottom with everybody cutting rates except the United States? On a relative basis, to me, that's not a small matter.
It's not a small matter, and it's a big matter for currencies around the world with the DXY and the dollar index strength across the board.
When you get the markets open here, jobs day tomorrow, but far more important, the markets. And Lisa Mateo.
All right, so we have 6,073 for the S&P 500. VIX is trading at 15.58. Euro USD is trading at 1.03, so it's dollar strengthening. Oil is trading at 71.41 for a barrel. And BITO, the long ETF for Bitcoin, 22.84. That's been going down, so Bitcoin is pressured. USD, Japanese yen, 151.99. So the strengthening of the yen, the Japanese yen. So strengthening of the Japanese yen typically means stress that's starting to build up in the market. I use that as a stress indicator. Another thing to look at is the VIX. Now, if VIX is up and the US Japanese yen is down, then what will happen is that usually you have market sell-off. You don't have that because you don't have that dual coupling. But there is a stress in the system that isn't fully being appreciated in the equity market at this moment in time. All right, that's how I look at the USD Japanese yen trade. So right now, it is yen is strengthening, but we aren't seeing that stress in the VIX yet. So I would not be surprised that in a few trading sessions we see a blip up on the VIX again. Probably not too much. May go up to, I don't know, 19, 20. I don't think that it would be in the 30s or anything like that. But the Japanese yen is going down. Now, I believe the BOE, the Bank of England, cut rates. I'd have to double check that. I think that happened yesterday. So there's going to be a movement in currency here, but for sure there is at least in the open there is a sell-off in oil, but it probably will mean revert back to average. The average I think is trading at around $72 a barrel.
Disingenuous to think that volatility will just be calm for now because there's too many moving parts going on, whether it's bonds, whether it's foreign policy, et cetera.
Is there an exuberance in leverage or margin or loans out of portfolios? People talk about a wealth effect out there. Part of a wealth effect is I can't lose, I can do margin. What do you see, and certainly within the confines of interactive brokers?
If it's leveraged, people like it. So for example, NVIDIA is the #1 stock on our platform, as you would expect, but NVDL is among the most popular too, the double levered ETF. Same for TSLL. For example, NVDL a week ago Monday traded 90 million shares. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. TQQQ often is more popular than QQQ because again, why not? If you like it, why not triple up
Can
on
I
it?
ask we're running out of time, but one question of the day. If I buy the double leveraged NVIDIA and I buy it on margin, is it then the double leveraged NVIDIA?
In theory, some of the, I don't know the specifics on
Yeah.
margin. Some of them are not as marginable as an individual stock. So I don't know that.
I don't know
offhand.
the specifics.
Yeah.
Lisa, do you want to chime in here? Your kids are on the couch. Trading
They're in the
interactive-
couch trading now.
They're
No.
trading interactive
Actually,
brokers in the couch.
Just 20 seconds. You mentioned ETFs. How much, your clients, are they all in on ETFs?
No, I mean, for example, we do see them buy like VOO. They buy VOO to hold, they trade SPY to trade. There's a lot of trade. We have trading very trading oriented customers.
Steve, we got to run. It's too important. The Dow equivalent's up 24%. Peloton, did you see this comment?
Sure, absolutely.
Steve, do you use Peloton?
I do not.
I do not either.
Power
Please.
user. I mean, but this is a stock. It's just been brutally underperforming. But it's up 25% here today, Tom, just on some signs of life out there with this.
I'm just imagining double leveraged Peloton.
Oh, yeah.
That means you
Sure.
buy, that means you Peloton.
Peloton is a poorly managed company. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the magnesium and zinc. This is very important to boost up your immune system. Take it every day. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, take a double dose. Take one in the morning, take one in the evening. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. Please go to my store, get the magnesium and zinc. Very important to boost up your immune system. Use discount 5. Vitamin C with magnesium boosts up your immune system. You can couple this with the magnesium and zinc. Great way to boost up your immune system. Drink it with filtered water. Vitamin C also helps with not just your immune system and soaking up free radicals, but also improves your skin. If you're not feeling well during the cold season, take a double dose. Make sure you drink it with filtered water because it's water soluble. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you use discount 5, all caps, discount, and then the number 5. All right, let's drop into the prayer breakfast speech by Trump.
Well, brave families whose loved ones were taken hostage during the October 7th horrible attack 16 months ago. And I know I speak for everyone here today when I say that we're keeping you in our hearts and our prayers. And please stand if you are one of the people who have been so greatly affected. Please stand. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, they're coming in, more coming in today. They're coming in, it's a very traumatic situation, very tough, as the people know that are here with us, but they're coming in. And I made a statement, and I meant it totally, that if they're not home by the time I get into office, all hell will break loose in the Middle East. And I think they respected that statement, so we'll see. But we have more hostages to come, and we hope they live up to their word. And I have to say, who knows if that's going to happen? But one way or another, it's going to work out. It's going to all work out. As president, I will not rest until every remaining hostage has been returned to their families. So thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. Also with us is an incredible survivor of October 7th. What a horrible day that was. That would have never happened. Iran was broke. They had no money to pay to Hamas or Hezbollah. They were stone cold broke. And when I left, they started selling their oil again. They took the sanctions off. They did everything wrong. I mean, I'd like to say the opposite of that. I would much prefer saying the opposite, but they did everything wrong. That includes with Russia and Ukraine. That should have never happened also. All those millions of kids, you know, the soldiers are just being decimated. The two countries, probably 800,000 Russians, 600, 700,000 Ukrainians, young people, just laying on a battlefield dead. It's a horrible situation going on over there. We're working very hard, and I think making progress to stop it. Also with us is an incredible survivor of October 7th who was held captive by Hamas for more than 8 months. Noah Agramani was the music festival. She was at the music festival and attacked on that terrible day. Where are you? Where are you? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's great that you're here. I watch you on television.
Okay, I'm gonna go to Fox News. They published about 5 hours ago about the Department of Education has been abject failure.
Around education come from the federal Department of Education.
Bring in Betsy DeVos, Education Secretary during President Trump's first term. Secretary, thank you for being here. I want to just read a piece of what you wrote for us to get us started. You write, we must make meaningful change to put students first, our economic security, national security, innovation edge, and way of life hang in the balance. American cannot continue to lead the world if its rising generation can't even read, let alone excel in math and science. You were looking at the nation's report card as sort of the basis for what you said. Outline for us what the explanation is there.
Well, absolutely. We know that the department has been an abject failure at its mission, and that was underscored with the most recent nation's report card results, showing that fully 70% of 8th graders and 4th graders can't even read at grade level. If you can't read, you can't learn. And the Department of Education's results have been dismal over the 45 years it's been in existence. It was founded to close achievement gaps. The achievement gaps have only widened since its founding in 1979. It's time for a full reset. President Trump is absolutely right with calling for dismantling it, and I hope that Congress will go along.
It's very interesting that, okay, Devos is, saying, okay, America can't, lead if next generation can't read. All right, well, it's true. There was a TikTok video that I saw that was posted on my X feed. It's, I guess they're a millennial or younger. I'm not even sure what generation that is. I'm lost track. Alpha, I guess it is. But the thing is, it's someone that just finished college. They're 20 years old. All right. They're in corporate now, first job. And she's saying that she doesn't know how to spell because ever since she was in school, she had spell check on her laptop. Kids can't even do cursive writing anymore. there are some serious skills that are being lost with this younger generation. Now, I think that these skills are important. Other people may think that, well, you know, the human race is evolving and maybe we don't need to be able to write anymore. Maybe with brain interfaces that will just think into the computer. But there's dexterity things that happen with writing or with playing music. You can ask AI to create music now, but there's something about becoming a master at something, you know, like the violin or the piano, or to write, you know, a novel. I mean, that takes skill, but we're just outsourcing it to an AI, just like how we outsourced after NAFTA manufacturing. And don't be surprised that people forget how to make stuff if you outsource it. Well, we're outsourcing our intellect. Dangerous, extremely dangerous. Because what happens is now you have a society that can be easily taken advantage of. Who's the master? Who's the puppet? Who has the strings? These are things that are just starting to happen. Now, so it's not just a Department of Education failing, but we have technology that's perpetuated from Wall Street because you can make lots of money on investing in these types of AI technologies, where you're going to have a society that becomes dumber and dumber and dumber, less productive, less innovative, and it's going to have to outsource its intellect. So the canary in the coal mine was outsource to manufacturing. Oh, manufacturing is a dirty thing. Manufacturing, you know, isn't glamorous like working in an office, a shiny office in New York. But the society has lost the ability to make stuff. The society doesn't understand, how do you make that thing? We just keep on outsourcing. Well, we've outsourced our intellect now to the AI. So that means that a big part of the population is not going to be able to think for themselves. Now, the ones that use AI as a tool for research to do lit reviews quicker, that means that they can produce more research. But it's going to get to the point that the AI is even doing the analysis. AI now, you can feed data sets into AI and it will give you an understanding of what some of the correlations and some of the conclusions can be from the actual data. Run the statistics, give you statistical significance or not. So now you don't even need a researcher, because the AI can be the researcher. This is dangerous. This is extremely dangerous, because the same problems that we saw with NAFTA in shipping capability to other countries, in time, the country that shipped the jobs loses economic and design and innovative prowess. So when we outsource our intellect to AI, then what happens is that we end up getting dumber and dumber and dumber. But the puppet masters will keep on making more and more and more money. I mean, think about
This, and we'll
that.
see
Think
wisdom
about that.
in return.
This girl that's in her early 20s, getting out of school, first corporate job, and she can't spell. I don't know what school she went to, but this is a problem. This is a big problem. Stop outsourcing your intellect to Apple or Google or Windows. Because what's going to happen is, what happens if the blue screen of death comes? You can't think anymore because your computer doesn't turn on?
the power, the control back to the states, and importantly, back to families and parents at the most local level.
You know, in the president's first term, there was a similar push to reduce the size of the agency. There was an effort to try to cut its funding, but in fact, Congress ended up raising the department's spending each year. So how does something like that happen, and is it likely to happen again?
Well, we tried very hard to scale back what the department did, the intrusion that it had into the lives of families, and importantly in state policy making. But since then we had COVID, and Americans' eyes were open to just what an abject failure this federal agency has been at its mission. It has.
She's bringing up a good point. COVID opened up because the students were at home doing the Zoom. And the term that they have at Harvard, maybe at other schools, is the Zoomers. Those are the students that were through that COVID era where they had to Zoom into school. All right, so those are the Zoomers. But okay, so these Zoomers, the parents had an ability to see into what's going on with these crazy Department of Education policies and the way their local school was being run. Now, most children in the United States go to public school. Now, some have the wherewithal to go to private school, either because of scholarship or because the parents, can afford it. Now, typically, a private school is better education than a public school. In the aggregate, when you look at the averages. Now, some public schools are really, really good, but in the average, most public schools suck. All right. Now, some private schools suck too, but a lot of them don't. Right. But you're paying, $50,000, to $70,000 a year for the student, especially in high school. So the point I'm making is that during the COVID years, the parents were able to see the failure of the Department of Education. They were doing things and they were programming these students to think a certain way, promoting certain agendas. So the parents that are not woke, all right, not ultra liberal, the parents get upset. But there's another added problem with the whole COVID era with these Zoomers, and that is too much electronics, not enough interaction with students in the real world. So there's a detachment. A lot of Zoomers have a problem talking to people in the real world, eye-to-eye contact. Some psychologists have, noticed this, that when people start getting out of shelter in place, individuals that focused a lot on Zoom for communication, either for school or for work, they couldn't talk to someone face to face looking in the eyes. They had to look down. They were looking down or looking away. So they didn't talk eye to eye. So even communication started to affect, even just a short period of time during this shelter in place, it affected the psychology of talking face to face for students and for adults. And then there was researchers that have said that the IQs of students have gone down through the COVID years, that they don't know this. They're not reading, writing, or their mathematical ability is lower during these years compared to prior years. So the education, not just the Department of Education pre-COVID was abysmal, but it also has created the failure of the educational process on top of the shelter in place led to further decline in academic performance of these students. That means that we have a society, the Zoomers, a lot of them suck. They don't know stuff. Now, does that mean that they can't backfill and get up to par? Well, they can with hard work, but with knowledge, it's compounding, especially when you're in school. So if you suck early, you're losing that compound interest to be able to really excel. Now, it's not impossible to reverse course, but it's hard for the students, especially if they're having problems reading and writing. It's a big issue. So it's beyond just the Department of Education. It's the shelter in place that affected the Zoomers, these students that were Zoomers. So what are we going to do? Are we just going to let, and then you add in the whole AI problem. The United States cannot be a country that is productive if we have a society that is dumb.
In firsthand how the heavy hand of the federal government has precluded kids from their learning, even in spite of spending another $190 billion extra to bring kids up to speed because of COVID learning losses. Though not only have those learning losses accelerated since COVID, but they were well on the way in the wrong direction before COVID even came about. So people's eyes were open. This is a moment of opportunity, and the public is demanding change.
Do you think Congress's eyes were open, though? Because the agency was obviously created by Congress. Its spending is ordered by Congress. You would need Congress to get across some of the changes that the president wants to make. Do you see Congress following through with this? And if not, what can be done without Congress?
Well, I'm very hopeful that Congress will take all of this very seriously. But shy of Congress actually dismantling and shutting down the department, one of the most important ways to get power back to a more local level is to simply take the funds appropriated by Congress and block grant them back to the states. Take all of the bureaucrats in Washington out of the equation and let states put the policies together that are going to work best for the students at that level and at the local level. And importantly, it's supporting universal school choice, education freedom, so that families can make those decisions. You start there, and then the other parts of the department, what it does, can easily be handled by other agencies.
Do you think that there would need to be a sweetener for people who are going to oppose this? You know, the fact that some schools rely on federal money, especially low-income schools, special education programs. Would you have to make sure that that's taken care of, is what you're saying?
Well, the reality is that the federal government only supplies about 10% of all education funding, and yet the regulations and all of the red tape around education come from the federal Department of Education. So there are many teachers, administrators at the local and state level that would welcome the opportunity to have more freedom to answer the needs of students directly, rather than having the heavy hand from the federal bureaucracy. A department created as a payoff to the teachers' unions by Jimmy Carter. It is nothing but a political organization that has adult interests in mind, not children's interests. And
they want more. Exactly. They want more funding. They want more funding so the teachers get paid more, which some teachers should be paid more. Protect their pension, fund their pension, have more, vacation days or whatever, and not be accountable to the actual performance of the student. That's what the teachers' union is all about. They don't really care about the student. If they cared about the student, then why aren't the students performing better? Now, part of it is a behavioral issue because of the way they were raised at home. Another part of the issue is that we got a bunch of woke teachers in elementary school that wants to say that Orange Man is bad instead of making sure that Johnny knows how to do mathematics.
Kids need better, and this is the time to make those changes. President Trump and Linda McMahon can get it done.
We'll see if Linda McMahon can follow through with the president's desire that she put herself out of a job. Former Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right. please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Max 14 or the Max 35. Take this every day. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle 30 seconds or so, and then swallow. It'll help to boost up your immune system, neutralize, maintain that good oral hygiene, and maintain a good mucosal barrier and the health of the epithelial lining in your oral cavity and in your oropharynx. Really important to boost up your immune system. It's a part of a 4-pillar process that I have, what I call the core, right? So there's 4 pillars to the core. The first pillar is taking the Max 35 or Max 14. The second pillar is taking C60 to soak up free radicals. The third pillar is taking turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans to lower inflammation, lower that chronic inflammation. And the fourth pillar of the core is taking Boomer Boost to boost up your metabolism and increase energy levels. When you do that, you're going to supercharge your health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Max 14 and the Max 35. I take it every day, take a teaspoon a day. If you're not feeling well because of the cold season, take a tablespoon or 2 a day. But it's important that you swish it in your mouth, gargle 20 or 30 seconds, then swallow. All right. I want to take a look at another video that all right, this is MSNBC, where Bill Gates defends U.S. aid.
There is, though, when it comes to USAID, a private pressure campaign. We haven't necessarily seen it in large fashion from lawmakers on the Hill publicly, though some of them have questioned exactly what's going on here and the downsides of it. But even Bill Gates told our colleague Savannah Guthrie last night in an interview that he spent time at the White House yesterday. He talked for a brief time with Trump, talked for a long while with Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, and made the case to them in part that what they're doing, dismantling USAID, has very negative ramifications. I had another former Trump appointee who served in the first administration in the State Department coming on and saying, I've spent my life works at PEPFAR, I've spent my life working within US agencies like this one. This is life or death stakes here when you talk about toying with and potentially ripping apart USAID. So it's not like the pushback isn't there, but do you think it would work?
I think it needs to be sustained. It reminds me a little bit of the kind of 1990s in the war in Bosnia, when you had night after night, you had reporters in Sarajevo reporting back what was happened, and finally Bill Clinton got involved and we had the Dayton Accords and something happened. Now, if you had a pressure campaign, I was watching CBS News actually last night at the risk of naming a competitor, and there was a fantastic report from Sudan with literally starving children taking food from USAID pouches. The USAID has been fantastic at advertising the fact that it's American. So whenever you see those big sacks, they have USAID written on it for a reason. It is the soft power. Now, I think if there was a campaign, a sustained media campaign showing these children, this tiny baby was literally there drinking from a USAID bottle. That child won't survive if it doesn't get that USAID aid. I don't think Americans are appreciating yet what the impact of this cut will have. But if they start to see that, Americans won't like it. And I think President Trump could be susceptible to that pressure, public pressure campaign. But I look at Elon Musk and the glee with which he is destroying this agency. I'm calling them worms, calling them evil, calling them vicious, and saying he sent the agency to the wood chipper. I mean, he's reveling in getting rid of this agency. So Trump is kind of is there enough of a public pressure campaign that highlights the good work that USAID does for people, but also for Americans, against this move of these must all be woke liberals, we have to get rid of them?
There's a lot of corruption. It's tied to the CIA. But I'm sure they do good work. It's not like it's all bad. But the thing is it needs to be totally restructured, totally rebuilt, demolished, rebuilt. Reduce the reduce the corruption. Now, there's nothing wrong with using soft power, right? And there's also nothing wrong with humanitarian help that people are in need. But it's way beyond that. Way beyond that. It's tied into conditionality with the IMF and the World Bank and shifting state assets to private corporations. And, you know, when the US comes into a region, it's usually dealing with mineral rights and oil. So let's, you know, is there some humanitarian aid? Yeah. But that's not the main reason for it. And if the billionaires love to, you know, help, you know, other people in need, fine. Why don't they create their own NGO and they raise funds, seed their NGO with the billions that they have, and help people in need around the world? Why is it that the US government has to do it?
There really is something so horrifying about a child starving in
This guy is such a clown, man. Joe and Mika. Joe and Mika. What a clown.
being far more likely to starve to death because the world's richest man is going around calling people that are administering that aid worms. And let me explain this again for those who have ears to hear. David Ignatius, when the United States provides aid, yes, we provide aid.
I want Joe and Mika, especially Mika, because Brzezinski was all about power of the chessboard, right? I believe that was the name of his book. And using soft power and all this stuff, all right? And using the levers and technocracy and all this stuff. So Mika is, you know, her father, Brzezinski, was national security advisor to Carter. All right. Now, guess what? There's a lot of corruption going on with US AID. Lots. Why don't we talk about that? Why don't we talk about the alignment with the CIA? Mika and Joe. Why don't we just stop with the emotional fallacy? Because I guess everyone that listens to, you know, most of the crowd that listens to MSNBC as it's declining seems to just, you know, get on the bandwagon of emotional fallacies. People are in need. People are starving. But guess what? A big part of this economic disparity is because of the 0.1 or 0.01% of the population that has almost all the wealth. It shouldn't be the government's, the United States government's responsibility to evening out these disparities. Maybe these billionaires should be realizing they made too much money. Maybe they need to somehow rectify the social inequality, the economic inequality. Why is it the US government? Why does the US government have to do this? Oh, you got a lobbying group that tells the president, that tells US AID to do something because that lobbying group wants the mineral rights of the country that needs the aid. That's what it's all about. That's what it is all about. But they want you to believe that's about starving children. No. It's not about starving children. What it really is about is wealth transfer and mineral rights and conditionality. Almost always when the IMF and the World Bank come in, there is some sort of big corporation that is making money.
And I will say this on Ronald Reagan's birthday. Some of us believe that America really is, and it should be, a city shining brightly on the hill for all the world to see. That is one of the reasons why we do it. The other reason goes back to what I've been saying this week when Harry Truman called Herbert Hoover in, two political enemies, two political rivals. But Harry Truman said, you're the person that can organize relief across Europe, across the world, in a world that has been destroyed by World War II. And yes, we're doing this because it's the right thing to do, but we're also doing this because hungry mouths become communist mouths, become communist foot soldiers. We have to win Europe. We have to win Western Europe. We cannot allow France and Spain and the Netherlands and all the other countries in Western Europe to fall into communist hands. And I know you know this, David, but it is so short-sighted. Elon Musk calling these people worms and this and that and the other. Our aid work in the Ivory Coast, it helps us get intel on Al-Qaeda. Our aid work in Sudan, it helps us
Well,
get
at least he
intel.
admits that there's a CIA embeddedness to USAID. But
On
don't
ISIS.
forget the Mujahideen, which is the beginnings of Al-Qaeda, was funded by Mika's father during the Afghani war with Russia.
Can do two things at once, all over Africa, all over the Southern Hemisphere, where people wish to do America ill. Our aid work not only wins hearts and minds, but it helps us draw in intelligence on those.
Isn't that rich that Joe, Morning Joe Scarborough, banging Mika behind the news desk, Mika's father, uses U.S. money in CIA operations to fund the Mujahideen and bin Laden to kick out Russia out of Afghanistan, only to see something later happen in 2001 that we call 9/11. And not call off that maybe the CIA, every time it puts its hands in something, fucks it up.
Who would blow up buildings in New York City, in Washington, D.C., in Charlotte, North Carolina, across America. That is what is so extraordinarily short.
If Mika's father didn't fund the Mujahideen, we wouldn't have had bin Laden and Al-Qaeda and 9/11. Now, maybe our intelligence agencies would dream up something different for 9/11 because it seems as though they were hell-bent on going to the Middle East for 20 fucking years. But literally, Joe's co-star, Mika's father, was a major catalyst for the problems that we have today.
Excited about this.
You're exactly right. The generosity of the United States through programs like USAID is scorned by Donald Trump as a sign of American weakness. And it's the opposite. It's seen around the world as evidence that the United States, for all of its mistakes,
The deep state, talking to media, Washington Post, demonized Trump because the deep state is realizing that if you shut down USAID, you're shutting down the corruption. You're shutting down one of the conduits of money flow. Ooh. That's a third rail. You can't tell the national security state how to run their business, how to run their money laundering. Bad president. Bad. That's what this show is. That's what MSNBC
and
is.
still has an ability to deal with the most painful, difficult problems there are. I have been collecting the last week and a half examples of what happens when these clinics close down in Africa, in Asia. People who have been depending on doctors who are funded by USAID suddenly have no place to go. The doctors are on their way home. They've all received the notices that this is over. And people are looking at each other in these countries wondering, what do we do now? And the answer is pretty simple. Now we turn to China. Now somebody else is going to come in and take up this space that the United States and USAID at a tiny fraction of our budget has been filling.
That's okay,
Somebody else will come.
because the economic problems that China has is only gonna spread them even more thin. And so when they decide to be hubris and take on Taiwan, it's gonna be easier to fight China. So actually pulling away and help and stop supporting these countries is like a capacitor. You're building up energy to be able to fight China. The United States pulling away, all right, we're building up energy, and China moves into this vacuum, and they've spread themselves too thin. And then they're weaker. So when they have the hubris to take the first island chains, boom, the United States destroys the Forbidden City. It's actually a smart move if that's what we want to do to China. Because we should not have China being a major superpower. Why? Because if their economy supersedes the United States in terms of GDP per capita, and their political model is communism, then what will happen is other nations that are democracies are going to try to remodel their political, restructure their political model to a CCP-like model. Now, if you don't believe me, that's exactly what was trying to happen, during, early 1900s, like 1920. There was a push to become more social, more socialistic, more communistic in Western democracies. That's the reason why China can't be successful. We cannot allow China to be successful at all, because their model will literally destroy the Constitution of the United States. Because you're going to have so many people willing to sell the Constitution off of the false pretenses that the CCP political economic model is better than a constitutional republic and capitalist model.
And have that, we call it soft power, but it's power. And so that's part of what is ahead. And I just don't think Elon Musk or anybody in this administration has thought about how quickly the power of the United States that took so long to build up can begin to unravel.
Yeah, I'm raising the question again.
Guess what?
Elon Musk,
Americans don't want to be taxed for these boondoggles. That's what this is. CIA boondoggles.
elected billionaire from South Africa is making these decisions. He has called USAID a criminal organization that needs to die. We should remind our viewers if this really were about efficiency, he wouldn't be going after USAID. A $40 billion annual budget for USAID represents less than 1% of the federal budget here in the United States.
Every single dollar that's wasted needs to be pulled back. It doesn't matter if it's a small part of the budget. If there's, out of the 40 billion, there's, let's say 25 billion of corruption, guess what? Too much corruption. That's more than 50%. Too much corruption, destroy the program. That's the issue. The money that they are given, how much of it is wasteful spending? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Please help and support my work, all right, by purchasing the products that I offer. So make sure you go to the-studio-reykjavik.com and get the lozenges. I have Manuka honey in stock and also elderberry zinc. Get a few bags for your household. Make sure you're ready for the allergy season. We're still in the cold season, so you're gonna need them. Make sure you have them at work and at home, so when you have that irritation, you can take the lozenges right away. Really important to boost up your immune system. So go to my store, get a few bags of the Manuka honey, very high quality. It's 60 parts per million with the structural nail silver, and the elderberry zinc, also 60 parts per million structural nano silver. Very high quality. Get a few bags for your household. Be prepared for the allergy or the cold season, because guess what? You never know when you're going to have that irritant, and when you have that irritant, you need to mitigate it right away. All right, let's go to another video here. Okay. Cash Jordan just.
Hey, there is, though, when it comes to USAID, a
Cash
private pressure campaign.
Cash Jordan just released a video 40 minutes ago, so let's play that. Because, you know, New York City is doomed.
I need women to know that you're not limited to anything other than living your life openly and honestly.
Ask your healthcare provider if Biktarvy is right for you, and visit Biktarvy.com to view the important facts, including important warnings.
The secret to nailing your taxes? Working with the original tax experts who put 70 years of experience to work for you, who are right in your neighborhood, who get to know you and your situation. This year, CY Block is America's #1 full-service tax preparer.
2023, just 9% fit the criteria. Give it another 20 years, and literally no young person will be able to afford.
Yeah, we don't have to wait 20 years for that to happen, because here in New York City, it's already happening. And while the prices for entry-level homes here start at around $200,000, for most people, living in these places becomes impossible after a year or two, because spending that amount of money will only get you a one-room, one-person studio in most of the city, making New York a place that's quickly running out of room for most of its residents. And the worst part about this is nobody in charge seems to care if New York's middle class disappears permanently.
Real estate sales stalled for 2 years as buyers and sellers just remained too far apart on price. Now the sellers are caving. The average apartment price in Manhattan will now cost you only $2 million.
Yeah, a starter home used to be a smaller condo, a smaller space, and someone would upgrade maybe after 5 years as they get married or have a family and want to move. But now we're actually seeing that most people are buying their first home as a single family residence.
Rents have been steadily rising in New York City in recent years, but incomes have not kept pace. Median rents in New York City rose 18%.
A new survey reveals 85% of New Yorkers say the cost of food is rising faster than their income. Nearly half of the people surveyed say it's harder to afford groceries and find themselves cutting back on healthy stuff. Meats, poultry, fish, eggs are up nearly 25%.
Just thinking about all of the headwinds that a 30-year-old may have, like student loan debt and car loans and credit card debt, and then they have rising rent. And so it's hard to save for a down payment.
So if you thought homes in America were overpriced, here it's newsworthy when something hits the market for under $1 million. And what nobody's talking about is this unaffordability crisis. It's only going to get worse in New York, because it's not just the home prices here that are forcing average people to leave the city. Literally everything in the city that has a dollar sign on it costs more here than it does anywhere else. Want milk? That'll cost you almost $10 a gallon. Deodorant? Get ready to fork over $20 to not smell like the rest of the city. Speaking of smells, if you're brave enough to take the subway to work in the morning and put your life on the line, that'll cost you almost $3. All to work for a paycheck that in most cases will not cover your rent. Something roughly 1 out of every 3 New Yorkers spend half their income on every single month, leaving folks with very few opportunities to save anything, let alone buy a place and build wealth. Something the middle class in America has traditionally done through home ownership. You start working, buy a home, and it builds equity, increases in value, and serves as your primary residence. At least that's how things are supposed to work. But here, that home you bought, it's a one-room apartment for one person only. And it could technically be a primary residence, but if you get married and your life expands in any way, you'll be forced to move out of that place faster than you can say eviction, which is essentially what's happening to New York City's working class. They're being evicted from this city by a series of economic factors that none of our wealthy progressive elites think are actually a big deal. High apartment prices, who cares about that when you've got a job?
So just remember, all this aid and all these weapons and all these, boondoggles cost money, and we finance the debt that leads to inflationary pressures. So people's real wealth, real income, real ability to survive in the United States goes down. The ability goes down because of this inflationary pressure of spending things for our soft power. Now, Joe and Mika don't care because they're already millionaires. But the thing is, most of America is not. And so you need to have policies that stop the wasteful spending. Because if you stop the wasteful spending, you actually reduce the need for federal income taxes. And when you reduce that, then more people will have money in their pocket and more people will be able to afford the goods and the services that they need for their life. But you have rich people telling you, we need to dish out $40 billion for this and $100 billion for that. And Zelensky, how much money do you need to keep on the war effort in Ukraine? Billions and billions and billions and billions. Billions here, trillions there. Who's counting? The Pentagon can't even do an audit. Remember? It was, right before 9/11 when the Secretary of Defense, Rumsfeld, said that it was September 10th, where the Pentagon couldn't find the missing money from their budget. The Pentagon can't pass an audit. Why? Why? Because people are on the take. Plus there's black operations and blah, blah, blah. But it's money that we can't afford. It's affecting the livelihood of Americans. Now, New York is the canary in the coal mine, but this inflationary pressure is all over the country. It's just exacerbated in New York. So no, stop the wasteful spending. Bring down our federal income tax.
Thousands in income, which you can use to buy the overpriced eggs at our supermarkets without batting an eye. And if you have no desire to ever build a family or expand your life, living in a one-room apartment isn't a big deal either, and you won't need that $800,000 two-bedroom we just saw a news article about. And as you're about to see, anybody who wants to own something that's bigger than a tiny shoebox apartment here, they're gonna need a way to get filthy rich.
Okay. Stop forcing ads for your forklifts on financiers. Start marketing to the right people by targeting industry.
Look at this place. It's like a labyrinth. And if you sleep in that bedroom and you're hungry, look at that. You can make yourself a snack right here. You got the stove and the fridge all in this one spot.
That's pretty good. But renting this for $3,500 a month is way cheaper than buying it for over $800,000, which is the price of that other 2-bedroom. But this is what you'd consider to be a starter home or a starter apartment. It's the right size for somebody or a couple, maybe who are starting out professionally and don't have a whole lot of stuff. And traditionally, somebody starting out in the workforce would be able to scrape together a small down payment after a few years and get something like this. But if that's no longer possible and people are paying rent their entire professional lives, that really screws up what have been the traditional ways the working class has built wealth and taken care of themselves after they retire. And certainly this dynamic of unaffordable starter homes and homes in general isn't unique to just New York, it's happening everywhere.
The starter homes are disappearing from the United States. In the early 1980s, as many as 40% of the new homes built were considered entry level. By 2023, just 9% fit the criteria. Give it another 20 years, and literally no young person will be able to afford to purchase a home, period.
Yeah, so in New York City, you don't really have starter homes that someone starting out would be able to afford. In fact, anything that's getting purchased around here is probably getting purchased by somebody who is already of means.
And the reason that this is such a disaster is because if you're able to own what becomes your primary residence and then sell it after a while, well, it means you'll be able to recoup what is the largest expense most people have, housing. Man, this is definitely a tight sink. This might be a starter home for somebody who just became old enough to start washing their hands by themselves. Man, look at this. My arms are stuck.
But you know something? Every apartment in this city is like this to an extent, and you can either rent something like this or you can way overpay to say that you own something like this.
But the problem of starter homes in this country, it causes a couple of problems.
The first problem, obviously, is the whole dynamic of how people build up through home ownership instead of paying rent. But the second problem it causes is that eventually it'll push up rental prices beyond what most people can afford.
And that's where we find ourselves in this city. We've now run out of affordable homes across the rental market and the sales market. And some people say things may be past the point of no return. And if you look across the street here, you can see the obvious problem here. We aren't building new buildings. All of these tiny little buildings here, they have to be replaced by the exact same thing if they ever fall down. And even though you could triple the amount of people living in each plot here, if you just allow taller buildings, New York zoning laws do not allow that. And that's why most of the real estate that you find in this city looks and feels like where we are right now. However, the lack of new construction isn't the only reason why housing prices haven't gone down to what most people can afford.
Sadly, there's a much bigger monster out there that's holding many people back
financially, stopping them from owning homes, and it's probably not going to change anytime soon.
The premium paid to buy a home has increased sharply relative to renting over the past decade. The increases in home prices have also outpaced increases in wages, and the median age of the typical first-time home buyer has climbed to 38. That's up from age 29 in 1981.
So people used to buy what would be considered starter homes in their 20s, but now people are buying those same homes in their 40s, essentially. Now, one recent report has the average sale price of a home in Manhattan costing $2 million, which is just an insane amount of money. Well, let's say you're able to find one for $1 million. Here, I found one that's got terrible pictures, which are shrunken down for some reason. Well, look at that, $999,000. And what do you have for a monthly payment? Well, you've got a mortgage payment, which is going to be around $7,000 a month, and then maintenance fees, which include taxes, of around $1,900 a month. $9,000 a month to experience home ownership. You could rent a home and take the other $5,000 plus a month that you're saving and invest that money somewhere else and get a return on that. Home ownership almost doesn't make sense for many people in New York right now, but because of the rental prices, neither does renting, unfortunately. Now, yes, you could drastically increase the number of starter homes here if you would build more of them. However, we don't just have restricted zoning rules. We've got another problem. Look out this window here. Look at all these buildings packed up next to each other. There isn't any vacant land or any space to build new stuff. The only way to build here is up, and we're not allowing that for some reason. I guess we still want to be able to see the sky, which of course won't be possible if you fill up all the empty space we've got here with a bunch of skyscrapers. And if you were to do that, blocking the view of everybody that owns a home right now would devalue.
Now, when this issue spreads across the country, this is the canary in the coal mine, or another data point that is pushing the society towards a French Revolution. Because I keep on saying, our representative government is not paying attention to we the people. They are only paying attention to K Street. They're only paying attention to lobbying groups, because that's where the PAC money is, the super PAC money. The real power is through the lobbying groups. And our representatives in government do not care about we, the people. Now, if we don't self-correct peacefully, it's going to end up being a French Revolution. It's not going to be an American Revolution, because the American Revolution was tame. A French Revolution is killing off the aristocracy. And that also means probably a government that is not going to be a representative government. We're going to have less of what our founding fathers gave us. But the aristocracy will be killed. That's where the country's going, if our representative government doesn't pay attention.
Revealing that people who already own something now are totally against the idea of newcomers to the homeownership game like me or you, which has a lot to do with why there's so much opposition to new home construction or taller buildings in general. However, New York City is so much further down the doom spiral of unaffordable home prices that it should be serving as a canary in the coal mine, so to speak, for other cities that don't want to build homes either. Only it isn't able to serve in that manner for itself for some reason.
Now, new data backs it up. Rents have been steadily rising in New York City in recent years, but incomes have not kept pace. The Fiscal Policy Institute just released a report that found that median rents in New York City rose 18% between 2019 and 2023. During that same period, incomes only grew by just over 11%.
So the only way that incomes can rise slower than rents are rising is if you have a shortage of places to rent, which is where we are right now. We're actually in the worst housing crisis New York City has seen in the last 50 years. It's crazy. 1.4% of apartments are even available to be rented. And right now the average upfront costs to rent something are $13,000, an amount of money that would bankrupt most people. And what that creates is a situation where you have people who are stuck in an apartment where they might be paying too much to move, or where they might be missing out on certain aspects of life, but moving from that apartment would cost so much money that they end up staying there. And God forbid you lose your security deposit when you move. Oh man, that's an extra month of rent on top of that $13,000. And then the movers, I mean, you could be paying $20,000, revealing that everyone who rents here is a prisoner to some extent. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, if renting's a bad move and if housing demand is so high, why don't I just buy every place I live in? For example, if all I can afford is a studio apartment for a couple $100,000, if I've got the money for it, I'll buy it. Well, you could technically go and do that, but the problem is a one-room apartment might not be a place that you can live in for a very long time. And statistically, if your housing needs change within 5 years and you sell within that period, you'll lose money. And this rule is known as the 5-year rule. But here's why it doesn't always apply, especially in overpriced markets like New York. This is a one-room, one-bathroom apartment. It's a studio, and it costs almost $500,000. And if you look down here, the last recorded closing was back in 2016 for around the same price, which is what it's selling for today. Whoever bought this thing 9 years ago is gonna lose money on it. And even if they sell it for the exact same price, they still have to pay the broker's commission. They have all the costs of owning it, the carrying costs. And if the home you buy here doesn't go up in value, that could blow up.
This is the sign that you keep on raising the cost of the homes. Eventually it hits a max, and those last buyers end up starting to see the downfall, and you're right at that point. The problem comes in is that people's incomes haven't grown enough to be able to support the outlays to purchasing those homes. So you're not gonna, it's gonna be hard to find buyers. So they'll keep on dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping. But I mean, think about it. It's the same issue with the banks, all right? You can't have a society where the price of homes grows at 10, 20% year over year, or every 3 years, while your income is only growing maybe 3% or 4%. That differential doesn't square well. So you can't afford the rising home prices. Now, take a look at what's going on with the banks. Because Wall Street keeps on pushing for further revenue, the banks are trying to grow at 15%, 20%. But how do you grow a bank, the banking industry, at 10 or 15% year over year, or even every other year, when the economy can only grow at 3 or 5% a year, year over year? So Wall Street signals to the banks, you have to grow or we're going to short your stock unless you're growing 15%. So what happens is the banks find ways to increase fees or take risks in the market. So they're trading revenue. But the bottom line is this: it's a system that will collapse because it's not sustainable. And this is the reason why in the Bible it talks about don't overcharge. It talks in the Bible about problems with interest, charging interest. We're seeing the wisdom of the usury laws that are in the Torah. We're seeing the wisdom of this. Don't do it. If you do, this is what's going to happen. So now you have this huge disparity between the haves and the have-nots. So you have a system, a financial system, that is geared for more revenue, more profitability, faster than the economy. Now, really, be honest with yourself. How can you justify the growth of the financial industry in the United States to grow faster than the real economy? Unless you're playing financial engineering games. The same issue. How can you justify, for stability, the housing industry when the rate of sale price is growing faster than the actual economy or people's income levels? Because as the value of those homes go up, those municipalities are going to reassess the property and charge higher property tax. So the municipalities want the rising increase of home prices because they'll be able to assess at a higher level. If you don't believe me, look at what happened when Lehman, when they had to reassess and cut down the value of the property. So the bottom line here is this: it's an unsustainable system. It's going to crash.
Plans for financial freedom and wealth building for sure. But losing money on your primary residence, if that's the worst thing that happens to you in New York, consider yourself lucky, because now prices are so high that even buying the things that are supposed to go in the apartment and keep you alive while you live here is becoming impossible for most people.
Bridget, I am going to ask you the question. Are you okay?
No!
So, Bridget, this is crazy. $2.49 for the basic Walgreens water brand. That is crazy. But it's not just Walgreens.
$2.50 for water. I mean, get real. Get real. And most likely that's fluorinated or has microplastics in it, so it's really bad for you. But the point here is that it's unsustainable. The root cause of some of this over exuberance in the market, and the market's still going to go up. I wouldn't be surprised if the S&P 500 hits 7,000 in 2025 or early 2026. It's very probable. But the system is not sustainable in the long term.
store here that sells anything has prices that are much higher than most people expect. And in fact, they're so high that many people are having problems feeding themselves. And food insecurity is a real deal here. And people are also trying to pay their overpriced rents.
85% of New Yorkers say the cost of food is rising faster than their income. Nearly half of the people surveyed say it's harder to afford groceries and find themselves cutting back on healthy stuff.
You know something? This sounds just like the housing market. 85% of New Yorkers report that the costs to buy food are rising way faster than they can afford, with things like cereals and baking products being 26% more expensive than they were in 18. Milk and eggs, those are up 25%. Fruits and vegetables, those are up 17%. And astronomical grocery prices are just another way the middle class here is being squeezed and forced out of this city. Basic apartments, those cost too much. Basic foods at the grocery store, those also cost too much. Now, food prices are rising due to factors that are related to the production of the very foods we're consuming, yes, but that's not the only reason prices are high in a city like New York. You've got other issues like theft, which causes a lot of stuff to get stolen. And if people are stealing their groceries instead of paying for them, that's just going to jack up prices. And 93% of grocers said they were shoplifted from in 2023. That's absurd. But that's not the only problem we've got in New York. You've got the high rent, you've got the high cost of labor. All of that jacks up the price that a given thing of rose oil moisturizing hand cream has to sell for. But out of control rent, it's not the only problem a store like this is going to have. They've got out of control utility costs as well. Any business that uses water for any reason now has to pay more for it because of new taxes that the city charged itself and then passed along to landlords and companies like this grocery store. But it's one thing to have high rent along with a high cost for obtaining the products you want to sell in your store. At least you can account for what those are. They don't typically change on a week-by-week basis, but shoplifting, that is unpredictable. A store could be fine for a while, and then it could get hit big time. And massive amounts of products could get
Tide powder to wash your clothes. Almost 16 bucks. But the Democrats want you to worry about, U.S. aid being cut, or, Kash Patel run the FBI. Your representatives want you to look somewhere and focus on the eye candy and maintain your bread and circus, buy your Doritos and watch the football game, and not really focus on your representative government not caring about you, not paying attention to your needs, not paying attention to the damage that they are creating. And they are only focused on K Street. Yeah, let's listen in to the Senate talking about Kash Patel.
Of the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI is really key to all the work and the belief in our justice system. And I am shocked that our Republican colleagues have not signified any concern about this nominee. A nominee, in addition to the arguments made by my colleagues, a nominee who said that he should close down the FBI headquarters where they do all the terrorism and they coordinate the cyber investigations. A nominee who repeatedly said, including in his hearing, that the FBI is corrupt. I pointed out to him is that during the previous director's time period, Christopher Wray, a director appointed by Donald Trump, the applications to the FBI went up threefold. To me, that shows that people view the agency with integrity. Do they agree with every prosecution ever made? Of course not.
There is definitely an issue with the FBI and the corruption. And that it's part of that whole national security state issue. It needs to be truncated. It needs to be restructured. The corruption and the deep staters and the administrative state needs to be uprooted, and something new has to emerge that is more beneficial to our national security, but also beneficial to maintaining the constitutional freedoms of we, the people. Because what has happened over time is that these agencies feel that they are above the Constitution.
Sent to FBI employees requesting a list of everyone who had worked on January 6 cases, quote, to determine whether any additional personnel actions are necessary, end quote. So you just get assigned to a case, you're a brand new agent, or maybe you've been there and you have a specialty working on certain types of cases. You get assigned and now you're on this list. Seems a little bit reminiscent to the list that Kash Patel has at the end of his book. This could sweep up and will sweep up agents that are just doing their job. The FBI director's loyalty must be to the American people, to the Constitution, and to the rule of law. But Mr. Patel has made it clear that his loyalty is to the president.
What about the Democratic Party? Klobuchar, Klobuchar, whatever her last name is. Why don't you pay attention to we the people? And don't be so worried about the national security state. Don't be so worried about the administrative state. Don't be so worried about the ones that are corrupt and you're trying to just let them keep their jobs. Stop worrying about them. Start worrying about we the people, because it was the national security state going all the way back before 9/11, but I want to make the delineation point at 9/11 and past 9/11. You know, this post 9/11 world that we live in, it has been nothing but a power grab by the national security state. And we the people don't want that. But it seems that Amy, the senator from, is a Democrat. I'm not sure where she's from, but the thing is that maybe it's Maine. But the point here is that she's more focused on the national security state. She's not focused on we the people. She wants to protect these people. She wants to protect the FBI agents. How much has she been doing to protect the actual we the people? How rich has she become since she's become senator? I don't know, but I'm sure that she does insider trading. Of course, legal, because senators can do whatever the fuck they want.
Enforcement agency involved in investigating crimes and keeping the American people safe. I asked him if he understood who the FBI works for. And he answered essentially through the Department of Justice, the White House. I gave him another chance to answer not who they report to, but who they work for. And he said again, the White House. And I said, Mr. Patel, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General now, answered correctly that you work for the American people and the Constitution, not the White House. I asked if he would refuse a direct order from the president to do something inappropriate, immoral, or illegal, and he would not answer. I asked if he would follow the precedent of Director Wray and others.
All right, let's go to Fox News, and Hegseth is being interviewed. This was from last night.
The president has spent basically his entire public career criticizing foreign entanglements, nation building, sending American troops to fight abroad, particularly in the Middle East. This plan seems like it could ultimately involve all of those things. Can you explain this reversal and how building and owning Gaza squares with America First foreign policy?
I would reject the premise of your question that this forces the United States to be entangled in conflicts abroad. Let me just take a step back here, because
by owning Gaza, it pushes the Middle East to be more prosperous and safer, especially when we start hunting down the Ayatollah from Iran, because that's exactly what needs to happen. That is America First policy, because what do we want? A never-ending war in the Middle East again? Do we want to continue on funding Israel and funding the Palestinians into perpetuity? Isn't it better to get the job done now? Isn't that the better way to deal with it? Or do you just want to kick the can down the road and we continue on wasteful spending on both sides, on the Israeli side and on the Palestinian side, because Americans are stupid?
This is an out-of-the-box idea. That's who President Trump is. That's why the American people elected him.
Indeed, the president's bombshell announcement yesterday seemed to catch Capitol Hill, along with foreign allies and foes, a little bit off guard.
He said in that press conference, everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land. Well, here are some of the words from the leaders across the region this morning: unequivocal rejection, illegal, racist, non-negotiable, absurd.
Now, is that just a typical press naysaying, or is it
illegal, absurd, racist? You know what? Might as well do it.
On here, joining me now, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, first time on the Ingram angle as the Secretary of Defense. Mr. Secretary, congratulations. It is fabulous to have you on tonight. I saw you earlier with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I know you said you didn't want to get ahead of the president on this, but this has caused quite a stir among our allies and among our adversaries. What can you tell us tonight to clear up some of the confusion about what the president floated?
Well, I think what Caroline said is right. There's a lot of assumptions being pushed upon what the president said. And what I said in front of Bibi Netanyahu, it's worth repeating right now, that ultimately all options are on the table because we're not gonna lay out exactly what we would or would not do in this particular context. This is an outside the box thinker who understands, Laura, the definition of insanity, which is trying to do the same thing and hoping for a different result. And in Gaza, we've seen for decades, time and time again, this false belief that if we just try a different sort of Hamas, or maybe the Palestinian Authority, or maybe once they're cleared, then we allow them back in, we renegotiate again, that we'll get some sort of a different outcome. Bibi Netanyahu and the Israelis know that's not true. President Trump knows that's not true. And so he's willing to overturn the apple cart. As she said, think outside the box, recognize that you can, through these types of discussions, Laura, you can also move the Overton window of what's possible. The Israelis want to remove Hamas. This is what, Benjamin Netanyahu and others have said very clearly. Hamas needs to go. There's phases of the negotiations that the Israelis are undertaking, and we need to bring our Americans back as well. But once Israel is able to eradicate Hamas, that's not our job. Israel wants to do that, and they will do that. The status of Gaza after that is a conversation that President Trump is willing to have. What is its status? How is it actually guaranteed? And Laura, you and I have talked about this too in the past. I'm a veteran of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I recognize what entanglement in the last 2 decades has looked like. President Trump was one of the first people to call the Iraq War a dumb war. And that's not to impugn those that served there. I love the legacy of those that served there. But the recognition of the result is that we got entangled for decades, and what did America get out of it? So he knows that. He's led the charge on raising the alarm bells about that. That's not what Gaza is about. Gaza is about keeping all options open, recognizing the support of an ally, and thinking outside the box, and who knows what happens after that.
Do you know if the president checked with Jordan or any of our Middle East allies before the announcement yesterday? I mean, and again, I don't know if this reporting is accurate. I have no idea, Mr. Secretary, but reports are that the chief of staff was taken aback by the announcement, and that others in the room were surprised by the announcement, which is, it's not negative or positive, but if a lot of people are taken by surprise, you can't be surprised that the reaction is, whoa.
Well, I wasn't surprised, Laura. I appreciate the robust conversations that go into how the president makes decisions. Nobody talks more to allies than President Trump. No one's done more for that region. No one's brought more peace through the Abraham Accords, through working with neighbors. He also recognizes the obvious. I mean, think about the indictments on Gaza from, say, the left for the longest time. It's an open-air prison, is what they say all the time, trapped by the Israelis. Well, what if we open the door and allow people to actually leave if they wanted to leave temporarily or for a longer term? He's simply asking the question that others won't ask. Okay, in the Sinai, Egypt, or in Jordan, would you be willing to entertain it? What would be the terms by which you would? I know he's had those conversations. I know he's willing to have them. He's also talked about other countries being willing to open their doors and recognize reality as far as helping to fund those types of things. So it's been a static conversation for far too long, which is why I think you saw Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu right next to him saying, this is a disruptor, outside the box thinker. We need new ideas in a place where it hasn't been disrupted for a long time. So there are people that would be caught off guard. That's something the president's willing to manage. But those of us that were there at the press conference, we're not surprised that he'd think differently, because that's what he got elected to do.
Could you envision?
I want to know.
I like motivating people.
I like being told what to do.
Could you envision U.S. boots on the ground to manage this takeover or rebuild? Would that be a possibility?
So, Laura, I think we're a very long way from that. And part of this conversation would be robust discussions that I would have as the Secretary of Defense with the President, with the National Security Advisor, with the Secretary of State, with our allies and partners. That's a long conversation. But ultimately, what I know in sitting with Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Israelis is they want to finish the job against Hamas. They want to finish the job against Hamas. They want to eradicate those responsible for what happened on October 7th. They want to clear that out. They want to get the hostages back. And as their ally, we want to support them in doing so. You bring peace by eradicating terrorists who seek the destruction of Israel. That's how you bring peace. And so I support that. What happens after that is a longer conversation. And hopefully in every case, and the President would acknowledge this, you don't want to have to use American boots at all if you don't have to. That's my preference. Having been there, of course, that's your preference. But you don't pull away options when the President's looking to think outside the box.
Mr. Secretary, it was phenomenal news on the Army recruitment numbers. The President, brought it up today during the EO signing in the White House. It's phenomenal. It doesn't surprise me one bit. Now we're learning about the illegals being sent to Gitmo, and I know a lot of legal action against that is planned. You've spent time at Gitmo. You know it very well. I'm looking forward to going there with you because that is a brilliant idea to remove this problem from the United States. What do you expect the U.S. response will be, and will it be successful against these lawsuits about the movement of these illegals to Gitmo?
Well, let's do it, Laura. I welcome the opportunity to go there for you to see it firsthand. As you said, I spent a year there as a guard, guarding 600 or 700 Al-Qaeda Taliban types. It's a phenomenal facility built for this, which is why from the beginning I said, it's the perfect place. You've got the hardened facility for Tren de Aragua, violent gang member types who need that kind of lockdown. And then you have on the other side of the island or of Guantanamo Bay Naval Station, a place built for migrants, for those who peacefully are going to be extricated out of the United States. We know there will be legal challenges. Here's what we know, what President Trump knows, is that border security and internal enforcement is national security because we were invaded for the last 4 years under Joe Biden. Tens of millions of people entered our country. We have no idea who they are. We're going to find those here illegally, prioritizing those with violent or sketchy past, and use Guantanamo Bay as a transit way to remove them and send them back to their home country. And I'll tell you this, Laura, I was down at the border on Monday, and you talked about the recruiting numbers. The morale of our military is sky high for two key reasons. It's incredible. First of all, it's the Donald Trump effect. It's the President Trump effect. They want to serve under a commander-in-chief they know will have their backs. That's number one. And number two, they're defending our homeland, Laura. I mean, we've spent 2 decades guarding other people's borders. And when you meet these men and women on our border in real time, able to defend their communities, their families, their churches, their school, they love that. They're motivated by that. And they know we will have their back. So this is part of a real solution to a real problem that the President promised the American people, and he's delivering. So will there be legal battles? That's what they always do. But we know we're standing on high ground. The military's capable and able to do this, and we're excited to be a part of it.
And Mr. Secretary, I know you're involved in the conversations about that horrific accident at Reagan National Airport, Black Hawk helicopter involved with that. Do we know anything more about why perhaps that Black Hawk was flying at an altitude that it shouldn't have been flying at? And of course, concerns among the public with the deep mourning for all of those lost about whether pilot error or tower error had anything to do with this. Do we know?
The investigation is ongoing, Laura. We have learned more because of black boxes and tower communications. It appears there was some sort of altitude issue. I don't want to get any further than that out of respect to all the families involved, all those who deserve a fair and thorough investigation. I had a chance to talk to the 3 families of the soldiers that were lost. Obviously, they're devastated, absolutely devastated. We pray for them. We pray for all those on that airline. And we're taking steps along with Sean Duffy at Transportation and the FAA to ensure that that area around Reagan National is treated differently so that something like that does not happen again. Because flying in anywhere should be safe and just a second, not even a second thought. So we're doing both the FAA investigation, but also our own internal. And when we know, you will know. We want to be fully transparent about this.
All right, Mr. Sec.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support your health and help support the work that I do by getting the probiotics and the other supplements that I offer. Let me talk about the 2 different probiotics that I have. The veggie cap version and the powdered version. Now I take the powder version usually. I mix it with hummus. You can mix it with yogurt, mix it with filtered water, your choice, all right? Or you can just take the veggie cap. Both are very high quality probiotics. And probiotics, very high quality ones, will bring down inflammation in your gut, improve your metabolism, help you to absorb your nutrients better, maintain and improve the mucosal lining, the inner lining of your gut, reduce leaky gut syndrome, improve your immune system, and improve the communication between your gut and your liver. Your liver is a major detoxification organ. And by having a good gut biome, you're going to improve your skin, your hair, your nails, and you're going to improve the communication between your gut and your brain. Your ability to sleep better at night is going to improve with a good gut biome. You're going to be able to have mental acuity, higher mental acuity, and you're going to reduce the potential for depression. There is an association between poor gut biome and depression and lack of sleep and mental acuity. So please take my advice, improve your gut by taking a high quality probiotic. You can get it in the powdered form on my website or in the veggie cap version. Take either one, very high quality, improve your gut biome. It's a major organ to target to improve your health. Please use discount 5 and you get $5 off. Make sure you go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's go to live now. Let's see if they're playing anything here.
You are watching live now from Fox. We're going to head live to Capitol Hill for that hearing as we await some of these other live events. We'll be right back.
All right, so they're in commercial breaks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Bloomberg here.
Since the pandemic, because people went back to in-person fitness classes at gyms, no longer using their Pelotons. John, as you say, kind of hanging their stuff on their Peloton bikes.
I can pick one up at a discount.
At a discount.
Really expensive clothes hanger.
Yum Brown Brands, what's going on there?
That stock is having a really good day. Actually, it's best since 2020 and on track to close at a record high. If the gains continue, this is, of course, also after strong earnings results, but specifically thanks to Taco Bell.
Yes.
That was apparently a hit during the quarter. The chain announced the revival of a few famous products from the past few decades, and also launched crispy chicken nuggets that apparently is paying off for young brands.
Now, they also have Pizza Hut, right?
So, yeah.
Now, here's my Pizza Hut call. Bear with me here, John. Growing up in the New York, New Jersey area, I know pizza, all right? However, going to school down in the South, no pizza. So I came to appreciate Pizza Hut.
And if you ever tried to order, I just want a slice at a pizza parlor outside the tri-state area, forget it. They're like, look at you, you're nuts.
But you're in Richmond, Virginia, you're in Durham, North Carolina, and you're gonna hank for pizza. Pizza Hut, it fills the bill, I'm telling you.
I remember it was famous for, having cheese in the crust.
Yep.
Back in the day.
Yep. So anyway, Yum Brands, a little bit of a mixture there. And you can talk to Michael Hanlon. He covers the restaurants for Bloomberg Intelligence. It's all about obviously the health of the consumer. And when you think about that, you see that immediately in some of these fast food type of places and just in the dining expenditures where people spend their money on dining. And you see that immediately. And it's a great read on the consumer, I think.
And as cannabis sales increase, there's always the Spicoli effect.
That's right. The Spicoli effect. Alex has no idea the Spicoli is. No.
We'll have to educate her someday.
All right, let's talk these markets here. Let's talk technology in these markets. Is technology still a leader for these equity markets as it has been forever? Shana Sissel joins us. She's the president and CEO of Brighteon Capital Management, joining us here. Shana, a couple of weeks ago, it seems like a lifetime ago, there's this thing we all learned about DeepSeek. And I know you guys spend a lot of time thinking about investing in technology, broadly defined. How did you guys think about this DeepSeek and what it may mean for technology investing?
So my general rule of thumb with any kind of news is if it makes me have a very visceral response, that I should step back and read. And so that was my initial response. The market, however, does not have the focus and the ability to necessarily do that. So it freaked out. As I learned more, I became less concerned about the DeepSeek threat and what that means for China as a competitor in the AI space. There's a number of things that stood out to me that made me think like, okay, this is no different than any time a Chinese company knocks off a American shoe brand or anything else. It's very similar, but there's more of a concern here. If we thought TikTok was a concern from a national security perspective, this is an even greater concern with its connections to the CCP through their app. So while there's definitely some interesting aspects of the open source code that can be used by Amazon or anybody to leverage, the actual app itself and the things that relate to that I'm less concerned about. In terms of what it means for the US companies in the tech space, this shouldn't be a surprise. It was always the greatest risk to technology companies in the US was having somebody disrupt the market. But I think it's a bit overblown. And quite frankly, I think we've been complaining about valuations forever. And this solved our problem pretty quickly.
All right, let's move to Treasury yields. I heard the new Treasury Secretary say yesterday that he's kind of focused on the 10-year and bringing that down. Now, I'm kind of a student of history. I have to go back to the early 60s and beyond, right up to present day. The 10-year seems to follow economic activity. And if you want to bring the 10-year lower, a sure way to do it is to lessen economic growth. I'm sure he doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, that's the conundrum here, right? You want to bring rates down, but at the end of the day, there is correlation there between the strength of the economy and the interest rate environment and the yield curve and how the yield curve behaves. The Fed doesn't have the power it thinks it has to control that. I mean, we've seen that in recent months with the Fed cutting and yet yield curve not behaving like rates have been cut. In fact, it's to be expected, right? Because you want to get out of an inverted yield curve, which requires the longer end to go up, even in a cutting cycle. But I think that the problem here and what they're trying to kind of fix is related to mortgage rates in the housing market. And I don't know that there's an easy fix to that. But I am concerned that there's this belief that if they just cut rates enough, they can fix this problem, because I think it's not that black and white. And there's a high probability of potential mistake being made if they go in with policy decisions thinking that it is that easy.
Shana, I know you work with your clients talking about alternative investments here. Where do you see the greatest opportunity in alternatives here? Private equity, private credit, hedge funds? Where are you spending most of your time these days?
So more hedge fund-like strategies. Private equity, private credit are kind of sensitive to the interest rate environment and also sensitive to public market betas. in the hedge fund world, especially if you believe that there's going to be increased volatility, hedge funds and hedge fund-like strategies are great diversifiers. So for example, last week, there's a ETF, BTAL, it's the AGF US anti-beta fund, long, low beta, short, high beta. That product did remarkably well when we had the big DeepSeek threat sell-off. And that's exactly what you want in those types of products, and that's what hedge fund-like strategies can do, is provide you that downside protection when the market is under significant stress. Managed futures is another example, like a CTA ETF. And then when you move into the hedge fund space where they can use leverage more as a tool, you can get even greater benefit as a diversifier and as a downside protector. But it's not sexy, and people forget that like these aren't meant to outperform the market. They serve a purpose in your portfolio. I like to think of it as like home insurance. Like you hope you never have to use it, but you would never not have it because you need to be able to manage the risk. And that's exactly how I see those types of strategies. This year, I think, is the year where these types of strategies are really going to show their worth because I think the market's going to be quite volatile.
Shana, thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate getting a few minutes of your time. Shana Sissel, President and CEO of Brighteon Capital Management, joining us here talking about the broader market. So one of the big movers in the marketplace today is Roblox, the game company. Stock is down 11%. It was down more than 20% early in the trading day. Bookings missed. Outlook a little bit softer than expected. Let's get some details on that. We can do that. Mandeep Singh, who's a senior technology analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. Mandeep, describe what Roblox does, and then what's happening with the stock today.
I mean, this is a platform, think of it as a walled garden where you can play any user-generated game as well as, the AAA titles and all sorts of gaming content hosted inside Roblox platform where multiple users can play the game. And it's been quite popular, with that demographic, the 9 to 17, 18-year-olds.
It's a great way to entice somebody to do their homework. It really is.
Yeah,
it works.
The use case is beyond.
You can spend 20 minutes doing this, after you do your homework or whatever.
Yeah, and so I think, again, user growth of 20% plus, and anytime you see a company missing on user growth, the reaction is pretty strong. Now, if you remember, there was a report from Hindenburg talking about how the user and engagement metrics are inflated. So pretty much the company has been, doing the cleanup post that report, even though they didn't really acknowledge, there were a large number of users.
Were they faking those numbers, or they're just so difficult to
I think the problem with online platforms is it's so hard to figure out exactly, what's what activity and where are the user metrics inflated or engagement. And there's always scope to, clean up and have real users being reflected on the platform. In the case of Roblox, brand safety is a big aspect because, we were talking about kids using the platform. So they've really, I think, done a lot since that short thesis from Hindenburg. And that's partly the reason why they missed in terms of the user and engagement metrics. But they called out Eastern Europe being weak and Turkey being weak. To me, this is really the quarter where the impact was the most obvious, and then it will gradually get better because they've cleaned out.
So it seems like at least a partial allocation for the Hindenburg research.
Well, I could make the case even for, a platform like Snap, where you may have, they have shown 100 million daily active users every quarter. Now, do they really have 100 million, or is it more 97 million because 3 million are just captured in their metrics? So no one has a consistent approach.
There's not a third party, like a Nielsen for TV ratings. There's no third party to verify.
There is no third party. It's the company that's giving you the metrics, and I don't think there is like a consistent approach that every company uses in terms of giving out their daily active user count.
Beyond the.
All right, I'm going to go to CNA. This was their night broadcast, it looks like, from yesterday, to get an idea of what's going on in Asia.
It comes after President Trump revoked a de minimis rule for China, which previously allowed
small packages under $800 to enter the US duty-free. The provision had been used by many e-commerce firms to send goods to the US from China without having to pay taxes on them. The exemption was revoked as part of a new 10% tariff on goods from China that require postal providers to adjust customers and other protocols to comply with e-levies. Some international couriers, including FedEx and SF Express, have said that they will continue to send packages to the United States. Hong Kong's Commerce Minister says that its government is considering launching a dispute with the WTO, but has dismissed concerns about the policy's impact. Meantime, the US Postal Service's about turn adds to the growing confusion over how to deal with the new tariffs. For more analysis and insight, we're joined by T. Wang. He is Chief Investment Officer, Private Wealth Management at UOB Kay Hian. T. Wang, good to have you on the show as always. Now, with the de minimis exemption taken away barely a day, now the US Postal Service has done a U-turn, accepting parcels again from China, Hong Kong. What's behind the thinking here?
Well, I kind of show you that this whole so-called trade war just started, it's very important to note that China is getting tariffs only from the U.S. in this round, while U.S. is trying to impose tariffs and other trade policies on almost everybody else in the world, including Canada, Mexico, maybe Europe, or even Japan. So you can kind of see that the context is perhaps more impact on U.S. than on China this time. We can expand more on that as well. So we're not too much worried. It is a big deal that Trump has started the so-called the trade policy with China. Another thing is that to note that is on Hong Kong. This is the very first time that the U.S. imposed something on Hong Kong. We didn't have that during the 2018 trade war, so definitely need to be monitored the situation with Hong Kong.
I want to talk about Hong Kong's particular status, but let's move and talk about Hong Kong's Commerce Secretary, Algernon Yao, today saying that he's considering launching a dispute with WTO, but he's also dismissed concerns about the potential tariffs impact. What's your view on this?
Yeah, let's talk about the tariff impact first. Well, 10%, is that a big number or a small number? I mean, it's really in between. And even though I said earlier that this is the first time that Hong Kong got a direct tariff from the US, Hong Kong has experienced that in 2018. So Hong Kong was not immune to the 2018 trade war either. We already saw the impact on Hong Kong's transportation and the logistics industry from 2018, and we're likely to experience a similar impact on Hong Kong. So it's nothing we have not seen before. That's why if you look at the market, Hong Kong market trading today, in the beginning the market was nervous, but eventually the market traded up, realizing, hey, maybe not as bad as people think. Obviously, the subsequent actions will be very important. Both China and Hong Kong try to fight back at the, you said earlier, under the World Trade Agreements. China is also using non-tariff, non-trade policies to try to get back to the US. So you probably saw the news about the anti-monopoly investigation into Google, the export controls on rare earth and other precious metals, as well as putting more US companies on China's entity list. So China's response is there. It's diversified. It's not just trade against trade. And
break free with the new Opera GX, a browser that puts you in control with a brand new design that frees up even more pixels for personalization and an inventory of
tariff, and all the China's response is pretty benign.
But for Trump to treat Hong Kong the same as China suggests that the US is suspending Hong Kong's status as a separate special administrative region, or SAR. I mean, Hong Kong is arguing that it's actually a separate standalone customs territory. What are the implications for the SARs, namely Hong Kong, Macau, if any?
Well, that's a great question. That's you hit the nail on the head. So this is when I say what to watch next, that could be the hot topic, is how does the U.S. perceive Hong Kong? Under the current U.S. Laws and regulation, Hong Kong is still treated separately from China under various U.S. and Hong Kong laws. The most recent revision, I think, was from 2019, still stating that Hong Kong should be treated differently by the U.S. government. However, this should be reviewed annually by the Congress. Now you have Trump in the White House and the Republican-controlled Congress. We wonder, will there be any risk to that special status in Hong Kong? We have not seen that yet, but definitely it's a big deal, not only from a trade standpoint, but also more from a financial standpoint. I think you asked the question earlier about, the trade center status of Hong Kong. I'm more worried about the financial center status of Hong Kong. One example being the Hong Kong dollar is pretty much predicated on the free flow of US dollars in and outside of Hong Kong. If somehow there's any restrictions on that by the US, I think we may have some problems.
Okay, because the Hong Kong dollar is pegged to the US dollar, but it is unlikely for Hong Kong to depeg, given that China's renminbi's capital account isn't open yet, though.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, like I said, we will see what happens. I might have a outside the box view that there's no such thing as a depeg of the Hong Kong dollar. If by any small chance, and this is, let me be very clear, there's a very little chance this will happen. By any small chance, the Hong Kong dollar, the so-called depeg, there may not be a need for the Hong Kong dollar, because Hong Kong dollar by now, by default, should be pegged to the US dollar. If somehow the peg is done away, then why do we need a Hong Kong dollar?
Well, we'll certainly be following the developments by the day. That was Xi Wang, Chief Investment Officer, Private Wealth Management at UOB GETTR. Thank you for your time,
Let me just plug a couple supplements here. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the turmeric. This turmeric brings down inflammation, also soaks up free radicals. It's great for your cardiovascular system and your immune system. It's something that I take every day. It's part of my protocol. Again, I talked about the pillars. It's one of the pillars. It's taking supplements that brings down inflammation like ashwagandha, turmeric, and lignans. Omega-3 helps with cardiovascular health, helps you bring down LDL levels, increase your HDL levels, so you're improving your total cholesterol. That helps to prevent red blood cells from sticking. So it's reducing clots. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3. Take it every day. It's really important to control your lipid profile. And as you get older, 40 plus years of age, digestive enzyme complex is really important to bring down the load on your pancreas. All right. As we get older, our pancreas health declines. So you need the enzymes that the pancreas is creating to break up your foods. But if you take a supplement, you're reducing the load on your pancreas. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the digestive enzyme complex to break up your carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids. If you're an athlete, either younger or older, taking digestive enzyme complex is going to help you fuel your body in your pre or post workout. That means that you're going to get the nutrients you need and you are recovering quicker from your workout. For the ones that are older and they just want to reduce the load on their pancreas, taking the digestive enzyme complex is really important. A lot of people underappreciate the importance of their pancreas. If your pancreas starts to fail or you start to have inflammation and pancreatitis, big problems, all right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the supplements I just mentioned, the digestive enzyme complex, omega-3, and the turmeric. Make sure you use discount 5, all caps, discount, the number 5, discount 5, and you get $5 off. any order.
U.S. Steel, which was blocked last month by then President Joe Biden. Nippon Steel said that there can be no guarantee that the transaction will close. Nippon has been eyeing the deal to expand its global production capacity, gain a stronger foothold in the growing U.S. market, and to potentially counter the increasing influence of Chinese producers. Chip equipment maker Tokyo Electron beat expectations with robust sales, riding on the enthusiasm for artificial intelligence.
Just to remind the audience that's watching the live stream on Rumble and YouTube with the dashboard, you can join X Spaces. You can ask a question. This is supposed to be an interactive show, so if you have any questions or if you want to give me your opinion on some of the current events that are taking place, please do.
Its results.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I want to pivot to Bloomberg here for a sec. Here, they're talking about air traffic controllers.
The president prioritized air traffic control. I think it would help with situations we had in in Washington D.C. The other day. Although I think these Army training flights that move along to that Reagan corridor are probably best put somewhere else. But it does feel like the controller was sort of juggling heavy traffic periods there at Reagan and looking for the Army helicopter to recognize and avoid that CRJ that was coming in for landing. Seems like better systems could probably help out in that controller workload.
George, thanks so much. As always, great stuff from you. George Ferguson, Senior Aerospace, Defense, and Airline Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. He is also an Army veteran, so we thank him for his service. And of course, the highlight of his career, the peak of his career, was about the Penn State.
Oh,
downhill.
Of course. And working for you.
Exactly. So he's our go-to person on aerospace, defense, and the airlines. Coming up in just a moment, Salim Ramji, Vanguard CEO, sitting down with Bloomberg Television's anchor Katie Breitfeld, talking about the asset management business and the fees.
It is fee war ETFs now?
Yeah, I mean, I saw they're lowering their fees on their ETFs to 7 basis points, 0.07%. I don't know how the economics work there, but they certainly work for the Vanguard folks because they rake in tons of assets, and all the funds flow going to ETFs is just an extraordinary story just over the last, it seems like 10, 15 years.
When I think of Vanguard, I think of the late Jack Bogle.
Yes,
and what was he all about? He was all about the investor.
Yep, low fees. Salim Ramji, Vanguard CEO, with coming up in just a moment with Katie Breitfeld. Looking at the market, S&P up 13 points, the Dow minus 90, and the NASDAQ up 43. So red and green on the screen here. We'll stay on top of that. We've got the gold futures pulling back a little bit. 10-year Treasury yields 4.45%. Right now, let's go live. Bloomberg's TV's anchors, Katie Breitfeld. She sits down with Salim Ramji, Vanguard CEO, talking about ETFs and asset management. Let's take a listen.
Our TV and radio audiences worldwide. I'm pleased to say we're joined by Vanguard CEO Salim Ramji in an exclusive conversation. Salim, great to have you with us. So we all saw the ripple effects.
Great to be here, Katie.
Thank you. We saw the ripple effects from Monday's move, and your average fee now is just 7 basis points across your lineup. The industry average, for context, 44 basis points. Set the scene for us. Why now?
Well, in one sense, I will say Monday was a pretty joyous day here at Vanguard. And it was joyous because it really is a reaffirmation of our business model. We're owned by our clients. And so as a result, as we gain scale economies here at the company, we share those back with our clients. And that's not just been true since Monday, it's been true since 1975.
All right, I'm going to shift over. I mean, Bloomberg's just talking about fee cutting for ETFs. So I want to go back to the Asian perspective of what's going on in the news here.
Well, Prashant Dutt, Professor of Economics and Political Science at INSEAD, explains the factors behind China's cautious response to President Trump's tariffs and how the U.S. leader is using these levies to pressure others.
There is actually an economic answer to it, and then there is a psychological
answer to it, where we try to look inside Donald Trump's brain. Okay, so and these two things actually are equally important. So just taking the economic perspective, I think China is trying to have a very delicate balancing act. Okay, so they want to show that they will not be pushed around. So that's why the retaliatory tariffs come in. But at the same time, they are sort of very well calibrated. So for instance, just to give a concrete example, China has imposed a 50% tariff on US LNG, liquefied natural gas. But the US does not sell a lot of LNG to China. China doesn't buy a lot of LNG. So that's not going to have a very big impact. Similarly, the antitrust investigation of Google does not have major operations. And in fact, most Google products are banned in China. So this is mainly symbolic rather than something effective. They are essentially signaling that they are open to negotiations and that they would want to talk to the Trump administration. And then we'll have to start thinking about what does the Trump administration actually want? Like, are they really serious about the welfare, well-being of citizens of the United States, or is it just Trump actually seeking to show a win there? So I think from Trump's perspective, what you really would want is signing a deal with a lot of favorable media coverage, maybe on the Great Wall of China, okay? And the consequences of it and the details of it, I think, are far less relevant to him.
In other news, North Korean ballistic missiles used by Russian forces have reportedly been far more precise compared to previous salvos of the weapons that Moscow launched over the past year in its war against Ukraine. Well, two senior Ukrainian officials spoke to Reuters, saying that there was a notable improvement in the accuracy of the missiles in recent weeks, hitting within 50 meters of the intended target. The advancement reportedly appeared suddenly after months of inaccurate launches. And this could suggest that knowledge gained from the battlefield in Ukraine is helping Pyongyang further develop its missile technology. Well, the experts are also saying that such improvements would have troubling implications for the region, as North Korea could threaten South Korea, Japan, and the US, or sell its upgraded weapons to armed groups.
And this is the reason why I kept on saying what is going on in the Middle East and Europe is going to end up to translate in Asia. And that this war that is predicted to take place when China tries to take the island chains, the first and second island chains, when they make their move on Taiwan. Don't you think that North Korea is going to be part of this? So that whole region is going to flare up. The flash pan is Taiwan. And you're seeing battlefield knowledge taking place for North Korea. Now, another key point that no one's talking about is, why does Moscow need the weapons from North Korea unless Moscow is having a shortage of weapon production? Or perhaps their technology isn't as good in terms of Russia. I suspect it's not the technology. I suspect that there's an economic issue in Russia, and maybe even a supply chain issue in Russia to being able to manufacture these missiles. So that means that Russia is a lot weaker. But here is a perfect example of how it can translate into an Asian war. Now people would say, oh, this is Europe, don't worry about Asia. No, you need to worry about Asia, because that's where this is all going. If China takes Taiwan, it launches a counteroffensive by the Allied forces in the Pacific.
Have developed rapidly in recent years, the country claims to have produced short and intermediate range missiles that can be tipped with nuclear warheads. North Korea had never tested its new weapons in combat until its involvement in Ukraine. South Korea is planning to install bird detection cameras and radars at all airports across the country. But that's after the Jeju air crash that killed 179 people in December. Investigators are still trying to find out what caused the Jeju air disaster, the worst of its kind in South Korea. Authorities are also saying that they'll try to move orchards and food waste plants, places that attract birds, away from airports. And they'll also increase the use of sound devices to scare away those birds. The pilot had warned of a bird strike before the crash, and feathers were found in both engines of the plane. Now, a complex attempt to rescue a truck driver who was swallowed by a sinkhole in Japan has reached the 10-day mark. The 74-year-old man, who has been uncontactable since the incident, remains missing as of today. But in what authorities call a step forward, they have located through a drone survey what appears to be the truck's cabin, some 100 meters downstream in a sewage pipe. Authorities say physically reaching the deformed mass or metal remains a challenge due to the presence of hydrogen sulfide, a toxic and flammable gas, in fast-flowing sewage water. Officials have also asked fire departments, as well as the country's self-defense forces, for help. Rescue has been repeatedly hampered due to the growing sinkhole in Saitama, just northwest of Tokyo. It's now almost the size of an Olympic pool, with a 50-meter radius area around it under a safety advisory due to unstable ground. A Japan Airlines plane collided with a Delta Airlines jet on the ground in Seattle, US. This comes a week after the deadly mid-air crash near Washington, D.C. that involved a passenger plane and an Army helicopter. In the incident, a taxiing Japan Airlines Dreamliner aircraft reportedly struck the tail of a parked Delta Airlines aircraft. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration has paused some flights to the airport as a result of the incident and is investigating the small crash. Delta Air said all its 142 passengers have been transferred to another plane with no injuries reported. The Panama Canal Authority has denied a claim made by Washington that American government vessels will be allowed, to transit the vital waterway for free. It released a statement saying that it has not made any adjustments to the tolls and other fees for transiting the canal. Well, this directly contradicts the U.S. State Department's claim that government vessels can now transit the Panama Canal without charge fees, saving the administration millions of dollars a year. Well, the State Department made the remarks in a post on X alongside an image of a naval vessel entering the canal. This latest controversy comes after U.S. President Donald Trump reiterated his vow to take back the Panama Canal. His warn of powerful action against the Central American nation as a diplomatic dispute with Panama escalates over China's alleged presence around the canal. Now, the Trump administration is walking back the president's proposal to move all Palestinians out of Gaza and take ownership of the territory. The U.S. leader called for the permanent resettlement of Palestinians from the war-torn enclave and suggested deploying American troops there as part of a massive rebuilding operation. Well, the shock proposal has received swift and widespread opposition from officials around the world, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praised it.
But the actual idea of allowing first Gazans who want to leave, I mean, what's wrong with that? They can leave, they can then come back, they can relocate and come back, but you have to rebuild Gaza. If you want to rebuild Gaza, you can't have, this is the first good idea that I've heard. It's a remarkable idea.
Mr. Trump claims that leaders in the Middle East support the idea, something that the Arab states have denied. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry reiterated Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's commitment to establishing a Palestinian state and said this position is non-negotiable. Jordan, meantime, said that its king rejects any attempt to annex land and displace residents after Mr. Trump suggested that they take Palestinians in. And Qatar, a key mediator in securing a ceasefire deal, said that it is too soon to talk about who controls Gaza as they prepare to head into negotiations for the second phase of the agreement. Well, over the United Nations, Secretary General Antonio Guterres says that the rights of Palestinians must be honored. He warned of the potential international crimes that may be committed in carrying out Mr. Trump's takeover plan.
In the search for solutions, we must not make the problem worse. It is vital to stay true to the bedrock of international law. It is essential to avoid any form of ethnic cleansing.
Malaysia echoed those statements from Mr. Guterres, saying that such actions would amount to ethnic cleansing and a violation of international law.
Kita menentang dan kita tidak bersetuju tentang cadangan untuk mengusir secara paksa rakyat Palestin. Apa yang disarankan, apa yang telah pun dikatakan itu adalah merupakan merupakan sesuatu yang di luar pikiran yang luas. Dan ia bertentangan sama sekali dengan segala convention, segala piagam, dan segala treaty antarabangsa.
The ministry said it supported a two-state solution as a path to lasting peace and stability. Indonesia also criticized the proposal.
Indonesia dengan tegas menolak segala upaya untuk secara paksa merelokasi warga Palestina.
So while we're having them cycle through their foreign language coverage, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver toothpaste. This whitens your teeth, freshens your breath, helps with your gum line health, reduces inflammation, reduces plaque, neutralizes pathogens. It has no fluoride in it. Take it every day to help to improve your oral hygiene. It's a very high quality toothpaste. And with a high quality toothpaste like this, what you're going to do is by having good oral hygiene, you're reducing the chances of cardiovascular disease and you're reducing the chances of valvular disease. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this structural nano silver toothpaste. This is the best toothpaste that you're going to be able to get. Way better than other YouTubers are selling, all right? So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get a few tubes of this toothpaste, very high quality. Go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. It's discount, all caps, the number 5, and you get $5 off. All right. Let's go back to Bloomberg here for a second. Better than a plan. I have no idea why it's not playing.
What they're doing. Keith, is there any strategy here to grow the top line? It seems like you grow the top line by just adding subscribers and/or. Is there any strategy to actually grow the top line?
Yeah, that is where we are really struggling, and that's where the company has been struggling. So they've had about 3 million, subscribers. That needle hasn't moved, Paul, now for many quarters. In fact, on the other hand, they've actually been losing subscribers. So right now, the CEO was obviously asked this question. What he said is, my strategy for the moment is, yes, we do need to reinvigorate growth at some point of time, but at this point of time, we want to kind of walk before we run. And so we're more focusing on stemming churn and stemming those cancellations, which is exactly what they actually did for the quarter that they just recorded, fiscal 2Q, where cancellations came in much lower than what they had originally projected. And so that kind of caused them to revise their expectations for the full year as well. So it's more, at this point, it's really more just about stemming churn and focusing more on keeping it's more customer retention rather than customer acquisition. But I think, soon as they kind of get their bearings back, they probably will, go into new modalities and get into newer products.
I asked Paul jokingly before how many suit jackets he can hang from his Peloton. But I mean, my point is, it's not just you don't just go out and buy the bike. That's not what they're really relying on. It's the subscription services, right?
Absolutely. So 70% of Peloton's revenue comes from subscription. Hardware, yes, is important, but the high margin.
People are tired of subscription models. They don't want to be paying an annuity to a company continuously, especially like Apple or Netflix or Peloton. These subscription business models usually fail. They're not working. Now, even software is trying to move towards a subscription model. And if you have to use the software, then you have to pay the subscription. But most customers, they prefer to purchase an item and not have that monthly annuity. But the problem is on Wall Street, A company goes IPO, they get an analyst to comment about the stock, model their revenues, their expenses, their income, and it's to constantly justify a higher price. They have to either come out with new products or new services. And a lot of these companies, the way that they try to squeeze the lemon is to get their customer base to have a monthly subscription model, because they really have nothing left in their bag of tricks. Monthly, when a company is based on a monthly subscription model, or a subscription model in general, it's the beginning of the end. It's going to fail, because the moment that people have cash flow issues, then they're going to cancel their subscriptions. So Peloton is a terrible business model. But everyone thought they would be like the next Apple. Yeah, right. Most people don't even have the discipline to get on a bike and stay on it for, day after day for a year and a half.
Well, he's
Yelling at people. Run! I can do that.
Exactly. All right, Geetha. Hey, before we let you go, Geetha, what's kind of the most intriguing story in your media entertainment coverage these days for you?
Well, lots of things for everything, really. We just had Disney kind of report yesterday. It's all kind of coming down to those streaming numbers.
Yeah.
We're seeing good progress on streaming profitability, and we're going to wait and see what happens when the other companies report with Warner Brothers and Paramount. But right now, what we're kind of focused on is really kind of seeing whether the Skydance Paramount deal actually goes through. There's been a lot of regulatory kind of rumblings, so that's a little bit of a wait and watch.
I thought we were heading into regulatory light environment with the new administration, so maybe that'll make a difference.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, Geetha, thank you so much for joining us. Geetha Ranganathan, she covers all the media stocks in the industry for Bloomberg Intelligence. A lot going on there in the world of global media and entertainment here. Looking at the markets here, kind of mixed. I got 10%, 10-point move higher in the S&P 500. The Dow's off about 145 points. That's 0.3%. The Nasdaq's up 22 points. That's 0.1%. So not a lot of direction.
Maybe on hold, because we have data tomorrow in the form of the jobs report.
Yeah, we have a jobs report and the change in non-farm payrolls. I guess the consensus is about 170,000. And the whisper number, WHIS, is the function on the Bloomberg term. When you get the whisper number from a lot of Bloomberg users, that's higher. It's about 197,000. That's been drifting up over the past couple of days. So that's what's going to be the data point for tomorrow. We'll have full coverage of that coming out at 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time. And presumably that will be a data point for this Federal Reserve as it thinks about where to go next with rates. Coming up later on today, Bloomberg Television's Saleha Mohsen speaks with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent at 1 p.m. Wall Street time on Bloomberg TV and radio, and we will bring that to you as well. Looking at the commodity space, pretty quiet there in WTI crude oil, right around $71 per barrel. Gold takes a little bit of a break from its big rise. It's now $2,850 per ounce. Bitcoin, it's off a little bit here today, just below $97,000.
Yeah, Bitcoin has been having downward pressure, I've noticed, and it seems as though MicroStrategies is pulling back on some of their purchases, is my understanding. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support my work so you can learn about current events and what's going on internationally, domestically, how to improve your health, any scientific discoveries that I think are important to talk about. But let me talk about some of the supplements that I take to improve my health so you can follow my lead and do the same. Vitamin K2 coupled with vitamin D3 is very important for your cardiovascular health and your bone health. If you want to increase the bone density, take K2 and also D3, all right? Stack them together. Take calcium supplements or drink milk. I get my calcium through milk, all right? Do resistance training and you're going to increase your bone density, all right? You're going to have to do that, maybe 3 times a week, 4 times a week. And when you do that 3 or 4 times a week for a few years, you're going to have a radical amount of additional bone density. It takes about 5 to 7 years to recycle the matrix of your bone. All right. So that means that you're going to see huge improvements over a 5-year resistance training program. All right. But you will get benefits doing it for 1 year, but you're going to get radical increases in your bone density and the strength of your body when you do that over this 5 to 7 year cycle, as the bone matrix naturally sheds and rejuvenates with its osteoblasts and osteoclasts. When we get older, we have more osteoclasts and it's eating the bone. But when you do resistance training and you take supplements that are soaking up calcium and sending a signal for your body to deposit the calcium, then what happens is that you increase your bone density and you're activating your osteoblasts. So taking D3 and K2 together are really important for that, and doing the resistance training and being continuous throughout the week, but also over a 5 to 7 year period. And you radically change the health of your bones and the density of your bones. Not only that, taking vitamin D3 and K2 will help with your cardiovascular health and reduce the chances of that calcium depositing around plaque formation. So it's really important. It's a dual purpose stack. It's something that I do every day. I also have a longevity cardiovascular box where it has a whole bunch of supplements that will help to reduce the chances of building up plaque and also over time reduce the amount of blockage and plaque that has built up. And if you follow that and you do that every day and you watch what you eat, so you do proper diet and exercise, and with that cardiovascular longevity box that I have, you're going to reduce the actual plaque accumulation. So please take my advice. It's something that I do to maintain my cardiovascular health. But this stack also works really well for bone health. Now, I do have a longevity bone box for bone health, so take a look at that too. Nattokinase can be stacked with vitamin D3 and K2. Nattokinase is fibrinolytic, so it's going to break up clots, and nattokinase helps to improve your lipid profile. Brings down LDL levels and increases your HDL levels. That means that if you bring down your LDL levels and you're bringing down free radicals and you're reducing calcium depositing into the media of your blood vessel, then you're reducing plaque formation. All right. So please go to my store, get the nattokinase. Stacks really well with D3 and K2. This is a powerful combo. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Follow my lead. This is what I do to maintain cardiovascular health and bone health. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Follow my lead on the health protocols and how to stack, and you're going to see huge benefits. All right. Let's go to Fox about Tulsi Gabbard here.
Missouri Day on the Will Kane Show. Earlier today on my digital show, we invited in Missouri Attorney General, the Missouri Attorney General, to talk about their suit against China in Missouri for their COVID-19 policies that they unleashed on your citizens there, Senator Hawley, because now I welcome in Missouri Republican Senator Josh Hawley as well. So we'll just consider this Missouri Day, Senator. And we'll also consider it a great day for what you've been fighting for in the Senate. You know, to win over the committee for RFK, and Tulsi seems to be on a big path, a good path for her confirmation. What won over some of your Republican colleagues, some reluctant colleagues perhaps Bill Cassidy, perhaps Susan Collins when it comes to Tulsi Gabbard?
Well, I think when it comes to Tulsi Gabbard, listen, you've got to admire her directness, her forthrightness, and the fact she understands she's going to be an honest broker as the DNI. She's going to tell it like it is. She's going to stop this. The last 4 years when we have been consistently misled, where the public has been lied to, they concealed the origins of COVID. They've lied to us about everything under the sun. And Tulsi Gabbard, she's a truth teller, which is, by the way, the reason why you've got all of these forces opposing her, is she's come out and said, yeah, you know what, Section 702, it really does need to be reformed. We really should stop spying on Americans. We really do need to release the information about the origins of COVID. She's taken on the biggest interest. She's taken on the established interest in Washington. They hate her. So the fact now that she's winning over the critics with her forthrightness, with her honesty, I think is terrific. And the same is true for RFK. I sat in that hearing with him. I listened to him answer his critics one by one by one. And I think it's just hard to argue with people who have the courage of their convictions.
Senator Hegseth came out of the committee hearing with the support of Republican senators. On the floor in the Senate, it still came down to a 50-50 tie, requiring the vice president to step in to confirm Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense. What do you expect now, though, on a floor vote? First for RFK, I would assume, and ultimately for Tulsi. Do you expect the necessary number of Republicans to be there for confirmation?
Well, I think it'll be close. I mean, I really do think it will be close. And, will it be more than 50 Republicans? I'm not sure. I'm pretty confident now that both will be confirmed. I think with those votes out of committee, you've got every Republican supporting them on both of those committees. But listen, I mean, Washington doesn't change easy. That's the bottom line here. And you've got lots of establishment forces like Big Pharma in the case of RFK. Big Pharma hates RFK, which to my mind is the greatest thing he's got going for him. The fact that he understands you've got to hold these people accountable. I love the fact he's out there suing Big Pharma. I love it. I think that's the best thing about his nomination. But, Will, they're going to go hard after him on the floor. I believe he will be confirmed. But it's going to be a fight because they're scared of what he'll do once he's in office. And I hope that he does everything he's promised to do.
For whatever it's worth, betting markets today have both of them north of, I believe, 96% for confirmation. I'm sure you know more on where your colleagues stand on these two than the betting markets. But, again, for whatever it's worth, that's where we are at Polymarket. Let's talk about Doge. Let's talk about the 36 contracts that have been terminated. Saves about $165 million. Every step of the way, Senator, no matter what the cut has been, from USAID or any other cut within the federal government, the left has cried uncle. Most of your Democratic colleagues have cried about the deep cuts of these beginning cuts. I'm curious, from your impression so far, is there any cut that is acceptable to your friends, colleagues, opponents on the left?
No, of course not, because they love government. They love government, they love bureaucracy, and even more than that, they love the far left agenda that these agencies have been pushing. And take USAID, that's the perfect example. Here is an agency that has been off road, has been spending our taxpayer money promoting abortions, promoting a far left trans agenda overseas. You want to talk about a form of imperialism. It's cultural imperialism of the worst kind. Leftist, Marxist, cultural imperialism that does not reflect the values of the American people, not at all. And now when this president brings them to heel and says, we're not doing that anymore, the left just melts down. Of course they do, because these agencies have been their mouthpieces. This is why we need top to bottom review. I love the reforms of the President's Institute.
You know, I mentioned I was sort of joking with you at the outset when I talked about having Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey on the Will Kane Show a little bit earlier today, talking about the suit against China, which has now been affirmed by the 8th Circuit, with standing to go forward, suing China over their COVID-19 policies. You as well, though, now in the Senate, held a hearing. Again, this is largely not, but not exclusively about China, and that's on the fentanyl crisis. And I wanted to share with you this quote. It stuck out to me. I'm sure you've seen it. This is a quote from the Chinese Foreign Ministry. Fentanyl is America's problem. What would you say to China?
Yeah, well, they're trying to kill us. I mean, they're trying to make an unbelievable amount of profit. They're trying to kill Americans with it. And I would just say to them, we're not going to stand for it anymore. We are coming for you. That's why Missouri's lawsuit is so important. It's why it's important what the president is doing, getting tough with China. We need to slap tariffs on them. We need to sanction them. We need to make it clear that the open season on the United States of America is over. For all of our enemies out there, you've had an open season for the last 4 years. It is over, and that begins with China.
All right, Senator Josh Hawley, thanks.
All right. Let's go to Bloomberg here for a second.
This year, it was 2 events, starting with the prayer breakfast at the U.S. Capitol.
We have to bring religion back. We have to bring it back much stronger.
Then, across town, the president announced a task force.
The mission of this task force will be to immediately halt all forms of anti-Christian targeting and discrimination within the federal government.
Trump said the task force will be run by Attorney General Pam Bondi and will eradicate anti-Christian bias. Linda Kenyon, CBS News, the White House.
President Trump today blamed last week's deadly collision of a passenger jet and Army helicopter on what he called an obsolete computer system used by air traffic controllers. In many parts of the East, an ice scraper is essential equipment today. From Harrisburg to Hartford, ice and snow making travel rough. CBS's Rob Marciano is in Hillsdale, New Jersey.
The roads now are getting a little bit better. They weren't so good an hour or two ago. It was really dicey in the secondary roadways here. There are a lot of school districts that are not going to school today.
CBS's Cammy McCormick has new climate information from European scientists.
The month of January set the latest heat record, warmer than January of last year, which set the previous record for the month. It comes as a new study claims global warming is accelerating. Still, there are hopes this will not be another record-setting year with La Nina, which could dampen the effects of global warming.
Wall Street, right now the Dow is down 135 points. This is CBS News.
Okay, as they're cycling through, I'm going to plug another product, and then we're going to go to Anderson Cooper. I want to see what he has to say about Trump. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the silver gel. I have it in 2 containers here, one in a tube form and one in a quick dispenser. Have some structural nano silver gel at work, in your desk, have it at home, so you're prepared to use it when you need it. It's a dual purpose product, all right? You can use it as a skincare. You apply it on your skin every day, and then exfoliate later in the day, or put it on at night and then exfoliate in the morning for skincare. If you cut yourself, minor burn, an abrasion, put the gel on the wound and it will help to heal the wound. In addition, if you're dealing with the cold season, put it on your hands, put it around your mouth, around your nose, around your eyes, around your ears, lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours, and it will help to improve your immune system and mitigate the problem. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the structural nano silver gel in the quick dispenser form or in the tube form. They both work very well They're very high quality. Just be prepared. Have it in your house, have it at work, because you never know when you need it. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Another important set of supplements to take, especially if you're 40 plus years of age, is Myotrol. Myotrol helps to build muscle and maintain muscle mass. It improves your mitochondrial health, so your ATP will go up. Do some resistance training to gain the muscle and to maintain your muscle mass. If you're an athlete, Myotrol will help you gain strength for your particular sport. So taking it every day as a supplement for strength gains is a great idea if you are in athletics, either if you're younger or older. This stacks really well with the Gladiator barley that I sell in my store to get those added strength benefits. For the ones that are older, taking Myotrol every day is very important to prevent your muscles from atrophy. Please go to my store, use discount 5, and you get $5 off on any order. So take my advice, build that muscle, do some resistance training. If you're older and you're not into sports, but maybe take a sport that you're interested in, something that's low intensity. And by moving around, you're going to improve your blood flow. You're going to improve your muscles. You're going to improve your bone structure. It's a holistic approach. Proper diet, proper exercise, proper supplementation does wonders for longevity.
0.1%. We've got the Dow Jones Industrial Average moving lower. The Dow is slumping 0.3%. Certainly Honeywell shares weighing on the Dow. NASDAQ up 20 for the NASDAQ Composite Index. That is a gain now of just about 0.1%. The 10-year at 4.45% with the 2-year currently yielding 4.20%. Spot gold down $15 a ounce, 28.51 right now on the precious metal.
All right, let's play CNN.
So you think you know Wix? Do you really? First up, we've got shape video masks. You can use different shape.
Good evening, thanks for joining us. We begin tonight, not for the first time and likely not for the last time, with a lot. Not for the first time, because anyone around for the first Trump administration recognizes that creating news by the truckload has always been part of the game plan.
All we have to do is flood the zone. Every day we hit them with 3 things. They'll bite on one and we'll get all of our stuff done. Bang, bang, bang.
Bang, bang, bang. Steve Bannon, 2019, classic. 6 years later, that tactic, flooding the zone, is in full swing again. In just the last 2 weeks and 3 days, the new Trump administration has already granted clemency to each and every January 6th convict and defendant and launched a purge of the FBI and the Justice Department. It has all but eliminated the world-leading global aid agency and frozen spending, or tried to, on thousands of federal programs, including vital scientific and medical research. The world's richest man, with the president say so, and the help of a half dozen or so unelected computer wizards, one reportedly just 19 years old, has gained access to the Treasury's formerly nonpartisan office for paying out trillions of dollars a year, including Medicare and Social Security. The president has threatened our 2 closest trading partners with the kind of tariffs traditionally reserved for adversaries or enemies, and has offered incentives to quit to every single person at NOAA, the hurricane forecasting people, whose map, you'll remember, the president reportedly altered with a Sharpie during his first term.
We got lucky in Florida, very, very lucky indeed. We had actually, our original chart was that it was going to be hitting Florida directly. Maybe I could just see that, Kevin. It was going to be hitting directly, and that would have affected a lot of other states. But that was the original chart.
The head of NOAA at the time was found to have violated the agency's code of ethics in connection with what became known as Sharpie Gate. Yesterday, the president nominated him once again to lead NOAA, or whatever remains of it. Just today, we learned that the CIA is offering so-called buyouts to its entire workforce. There's some question of whether everyone would be allowed to take them, but everyone.
You know, it is so rich. It is so rich. For Anderson Cooper from CNN, which is nothing but a mouthpiece for CIA, he was an intern at the CIA, and you know, I would not be surprised that he is actually working for the CIA, embedded in media. But the thing is, it's so rich to see him on CNN talking about the CIA and how it needs to be gutted by the Trump administration. Of course, the CIA needs to be gutted by the Trump administration, but they're worried about institutional knowledge. But 90% of the things that they do, they fuck up. So what does it matter if we're losing their knowledge or not?
New York Times is reporting that the CIA sent the White House an unclassified email listing of all employees hired over the last 2 years. The list gives first names and the first initial of the last names, according to the Times report, and includes what the Times says is a large crop of young analysts and operatives hired to focus on China, whose identities are usually closely guarded because Chinese hackers are constantly trying to identify them. Now, any or all of those stories could be the lead of any given day. We'll certainly spend more time talking about some of them tonight, but I want to focus for a moment on another item in that flood of news, not just because it's a big part of it, but also because of how well it fits another familiar pattern, making a comeback now for the first time in the Trump administration.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site. I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip. Why would they want to return? He also said. He also talked about sending U.S. troops, if necessary, to displacing the nearly 2 million people who still live there, forcing them to go to Jordan or Egypt, and rebuilding the Gaza Strip as, quote, an international unbelievable place. And also he termed it the Riviera of the Middle East. Now, it may be a fever dream, but he actually did say it. It did not go over so well, certainly with Palestinians or Jordan or Egypt or Saudi Arabia, anyone who knows much about history or the region for that matter. And this is not the first time that President Trump has been opining about beachfront property in surprising places. You may remember, he used to extol the virtues of North Korea's potential as well. But in relation to his new plan for Gaza, in a pattern eerily similar to the first administration, people around the president spent today trying to say he did not actually say what he said, or if he did, his words did not mean what those words actually mean. Those same people said what he said was brilliant, by the way, of course. One of those kind of four-dimensional chess moves. Here's his press secretary today.
Let me just take a step back here, because this is an out-of-the-box idea. That's who President Trump is. That does not mean boots on the ground in Gaza. It does not mean American taxpayers will be funding this effort. It means Donald Trump, who is the best deal maker on the planet, is going to strike a deal with our partners in the region.
Now, keep it honest, the president gave no indication this was some sort of opening offer. As for boots on the ground, if only someone had asked him about that. And it turned out they did. And here's his actual answer.
As far as Gaza is concerned, we'll do what is necessary. If it's necessary, we'll do that. We're going to take over that piece, and we're going to develop it, create thousands and thousands of jobs, and it'll be something that the entire Middle East can be very proud of.
So no, he wasn't ruling out sending U.S. troops who would then be involved in fighting the war that Israel just stopped fighting. And not only does that mean a war, it also costs money, unless he's pretending he can somehow just get all the land and develop it and have what he called a long-term ownership position. And are U.S. taxpayers funding that? Is that a private Trump organization development? Will there be a new Trump university there? Did the president simply not mean a word of what he said? The Secretary of State seems to think he didn't mean it when he said on 3 separate occasions yesterday that the people in Gaza would have to find homes elsewhere.
So what he's very generally...
Is your marketing tech stack stuck in the past?
Indeed it is. Upgrade to AppSpot, the world's leading MMP, with the most...
So what he's very generously offered is the ability of the United States to go in and help with debris removal, help with munitions removal, help with reconstruction, the rebuilding of homes and businesses and things of this nature, so that then people can move back in.
That's what he said, according to the new Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Here's what he actually said at some length and in great detail when CNN's Caitlin Collins asked him who would live in this rebuilt Gaza.
I envision world people living there, the world's people. I think you'll make that into an international, unbelievable place. I think the potential in the Gaza Strip is unbelievable. And I think the entire world, representatives from all over the world will be there, and they'll live there. Palestinians also. Palestinians will live there. Many people will live there. But they tried the other, and they tried it for decades and decades and decades. It's not going to work. It didn't work. It will never work. But more importantly than that is the people that have been absolutely destroyed, that live there now, can live in peace in a much better situation, because they're living in hell. And those people will now be able to live in peace. We'll make sure that it's done world class. It'll be wonderful for the people. Palestinians mostly we're talking about. And I have a feeling that despite them saying no, I have a feeling that the king in Jordan and that the general president, but that the general in Egypt will open their hearts and will give us the kind of land that we need to get this done.
So it doesn't sound like what Secretary of State Rubio says the president said, but if you're looking for more clarity, here's what the president said just a couple hours earlier in the day.
I don't think people should be going back to Gaza. I think that Gaza has been very unlucky for them. They've lived like hell. They lived like you're living in hell. And it could be Jordan, it could be Egypt, it could be other countries. And you could go 4 or 5 or 6 areas. It doesn't have to be one area. But you take certain areas and you build really good quality housing, like a beautiful town like someplace where they can live and not die.
Netanyahu just sitting there. There it is. I don't think people should be going back to Gaza. That's what the president of the United States plainly said about nearly 2 million people. And what the people around him now say he did not say. New zone, fresh flood, same playbook.
Well, that's, you know, I gave my perspective on the whole rebuilding of Gaza last night on episode 100. So let's go to Bloomberg. It's balance of power just started about 17 minutes ago.
Evening, right after 7 p.m.
Yes, absolutely. But there's a purpose to this. In some ways, it's just like, in terms of stopping it, it's pointless. It's not, they're not going to stop it. It's just going to delay it for 30 hours. 30 hours does not make any difference whatsoever when Russ Vought starts his new job. But the purpose is to put a lot of attention on him and create this definition of him. And this conflict is probably the only way Americans have ever heard of Russ Vought in most cases, or at least the portion of Americans that are even hearing of him now.
Yeah.
So by having this giant conflict, both for the general public and for their own base supporters, they are sending a message.
All right, Mike Dorning, always covering Capitol Hill for us. Thank you so much indeed. And as we consider this second administration as it is taking shape, we're going to get into what public opinion is actually suggesting about how Americans feel about these first few weeks. Cliff Young of Ipsos polling will be with me next, right here on Balance of Power on Bloomberg.
All right, so while we're waiting for them to cycle in, let's talk about some supplements that I've added to my stack. These are supplements that are really important, all right? NAC is a supplement that I've added to my stack to boost up my glutathione levels. Glutathione is an important pathway to soak up free radicals. NAC also helps to detoxify your liver and your kidney, especially if you take acetaminophen. In addition, NAC helps to calm your central nervous system and put it into parasympathetic. It reduces anxiety. That's really important because when you have anxiety, you're not sleeping well and you have higher cortisol levels, and high cortisol levels are immunosuppressive. So taking NAC is going to help reduce anxiety, detoxify your liver and your kidney, and boost up your glutathione levels so you can soak up more free radicals. This is synergistic with C60. So please add that to your health stack. It's really important. NAD plus boosts up energy levels. NAD plus helps to repair DNA damage. When you get older, you accumulate DNA damage, and it overloads the ability for your cells to self-correct. So you need to take NAD plus to help your cells along to do the repair that it needs on your DNA. This repairs cellular DNA and mitochondrial DNA. In addition, NAD plus also helps to protect your neurons. When you get 40 plus years of age, you need to take supplements that help to support your neurons. That's very, very important in an anti-aging longevity type protocol. So please take NAD plus. It is synergistic with C60. And ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is CoQ10. It's the most bioavailable CoQ10 that you can get. Ubiquinol is the active form of CoQ10. Most people that take CoQ10 are taking the lower bioavailable version. You want to take ubiquinol. So this, what I have in my store is the most available CoQ10 that you can get. So with ubiquinol, it's going to boost up your energy levels, improve your mitochondrial health. It's an antioxidant, so it's going to soak up free radicals, reduce stress on the cell, and it is a supplement that helps to protect neurons. It's synergistic with NAD+, NAC, and also C60. Again, like I've said, if you're 40 plus years of age, you need to start taking supplements to maintain and protect your neurons. So with proper supplementation and activating your neurons by moving around, learning things, creating positive neuroplasticity, doing exercising and resistance training and balancing exercises and stretching, these are all activating neurons. And when you do that and you're taking the proper supplementation, then you are protecting yourself and your neurons to mitigate some of the geriatric problems you may have with neurodegeneration, right? Most people, when they get older, they're not moving around, they're not stretching, they're not balancing, doing balancing exercises, they're not eating properly, they're not taking the right supplementation. They're atrophying away. And then all of a sudden, when they're in their geriatric years, they have gait issues. But people that holistically approach this problem, learn new things, activate your neurons by moving around, doing cardiovascular and resistance training and stretching and balancing, proper supplementation, proper diet, you are mitigating neurodegeneration. You're reducing the chances of the problems that you have in your geriatric years. It's anti-aging. It's increasing your longevity. It's increasing your vitality. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the ubiquinol, the NAD+, and the NAC. Use discount 5 to get $5 off. Now, you can take my advice or don't take my advice, but bottom line is I'm right.
Boosted by growth of the Taco Bell fast food chain. Again, Yum Brands right now gaining by 8%. After the close of trading today, we will be hearing from Amazon. Ahead of earnings, Amazon up by 0.5%. Balance of power continues. Back we go to Washington. Once again, your host, and here she is, Kaylee Lyons.
All right, Charlie Pellet in New York, thank you so much. I'm Kaylee Lyons in Washington, where we're marking today, for those of you counting, day 17 of the second Trump administration. And I know to some it might feel like it's been more like 17 weeks, perhaps even 17 months, considering just how much has happened in the 2 weeks and change since Donald Trump took the oath of office once again with executive order after executive order after executive order. It's been basically a daily thing. In fact, he has another executive order signing scheduled for this afternoon, 2 p.m. Eastern time, roughly. We'll see if that turns into another de facto press conference with reporters, where we could get some more news, because there's been a lot of it. It's turning into a bit of a pattern. But of course, it is still early days in this administration. Again, just 17 of them have passed, or we're in the 17th now. And the president says he's been spending these early days delivering on the mandate that the American electorate gave him. And that's why he's moving so quickly. But we wanted to take stock of how people are actually feeling about what the president has done so far. And for that, we turn to Ipsos, which has new polling out on a lot of this. And Cliff Young, Ipsos's head of polling, or president of polling and public affairs, is here with me in our Washington, D.C. studio. So Cliff, you have a lot of specifics, and I do want to get into that. But if we could just talk about his approval overall, how's it looking?
He's in a really good place. And he's in a better place than he was in 2017. And so if you take the average of the polling, not just Ipsos, but all of us, it's around 48, 49% approval rating. That's really strong in a hyper-polarized world, a world like that we live in. In 2017, it was 41%. So Trump 2.0, in my evaluation, is much more robust, much more muscular, and he has a much stronger coalition than he did in 2017.
Well, so when we take a good starting position, I guess, just how difficult historically has a good start been to hold on to? I think we all remember early on in President Biden's term, approval pretty good. Post-Afghanistan withdrawal, it precipitously dropped, and it really never recovered after that. So what does history suggest about patterns here?
Yeah, time is not your friend when you're president, and we were looking at your approval ratings. But basically, he's in his honeymoon period. This is the period when Americans writ large will give him the benefit of the doubt, give the president the benefit of the doubt. What we know is the following. Presidents typically have about 6 months before approval ratings begin to decline more precipitously. On average, a decline is between 5 and 7 points. And we will see, obviously, because he might buck the trend, but really he has those 6 months to get things done and get his agenda pushed through.
Well, he certainly isn't waiting 6 months to try to get things done. He didn't even wait 6 hours, arguably, after he was inaugurated. So if we could get into some of his initiatives, beginning with the one that we've paid a lot of attention to here at Bloomberg, considering the cast of characters involved, the Department of Government Efficiency and Elon Musk and these wider efforts to trim down the size of the federal government. So far, is this popular?
Yeah, it is popular, and indeed, we pulled in a whole host of executive orders. Some aren't very popular, some are. Those linked to government efficiency, saving, the public's money, are very popular. They're above 60%, which is strong, and once again, in a highly polarized America, public opinion in general is supporting at this moment those efforts.
Even the efforts being led by Elon Musk, I do wonder if there's any data on how people feel about him specifically as an unelected individual who's playing such a big role here.
Well, people support those efforts. And Elon Musk, when you look across the board, the political figures, let's treat him as a political figure in this case,
Sure.
across the board, he has pretty good favorability scores. High 30s, low 40s, once again, that's a good place to be in a highly polarized America like we see today.
Okay, so if what he is doing is popular, what's on the unpopular side of what we've seen so far? What is least popular?
Well, the administration has backtracked, right? And when they froze all funding to basically grants and services, they backtracked, they reversed the order. Only 20% of Americans agree with that executive order. So that's an example, like when it really hits the pocketbook, when it affects sort of children or the family, when it is seen as unfair, those sorts of executive orders are less popular. But once again, there are some that are very popular, some that are less so.
So when we consider, for example, the effort to dismantle USAID or the pullback in foreign aid specifically, not necessarily the money that's being spent on social programs or what have you here at home, do people care about this, or is this largely something happening in NGO circles, those of us here in Washington that are paying attention?
Yeah, we're worried about it in the Beltway. No one else is. The bubble, yes, exactly, the bubble. And basically, foreign aid has always been an easy target. Most Americans think that we're spending in the wrong place when we're spending on foreign aid. And it makes total sense from a strategic perspective that the administration is going after it, because really you don't have much public support for that. Indeed, those sorts of efforts have support in the mid-50s to the low 60s. Depending on how you ask the question specifically. So once again, public opinion is behind it.
So if we consider foreign policy issues as well, not just in terms of foreign aid, but in, say, the expansion perhaps, or manifest destiny, widening U.S. borders, looking at Canada as the 51st state, or taking over Greenland or Panama, for that matter. We've already seen the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, Mount Denali to Mount McKinley. Is there support for these kinds of notions? Do Americans want America to get bigger in terms of footprint?
Yeah, that's very interesting. Americans don't like the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico.
They don't.
No, it's in it's
Gulf
it's
of America is
weak. It's a weak plurality that are in support of that. No, in general, this sort of more muscular foreign policy, Americans are not in favor of. Indeed, that's one of the reasons that Trump ultimately won. Not even Republicans support those sorts of efforts. And so once again, if he pushes those efforts forward, those initiatives forward, it will be misaligned with public opinion.
Well, and it's not just in the case of Canada, him wanting to have Canada join the United States, become a state united with the United States. He's also trying to exercise a lot of leverage over Canada with the form of tariff threats. Obviously, that's been punted a bit, but there was a lot of warning from American industry specifically about the impact tariffs could have on American jobs, on costs for American people. Does the electorate reflect that in terms of favorability views around tariffs, or are they largely supportive of the kind of policy?
Support for tariffs has declined over the last, let's say, month and a half.
Okay.
And so if we were talking, let's say, in mid-November, I would tell you that a majority of Americans are in favor of it. Right now, we're seeing strong pluralities in favor of it. I think the reality has set in a bit. That said, when you peel away the onion and look at Republicans, supermajority support for such efforts.
Well, especially, I guess, when those efforts are tied to, at least in the words of the president, issues of border security, stopping the flow of fentanyl and migrants over the northern and southern borders. Obviously, that's not where those efforts stop. We've seen a lot of border and immigration-oriented action from this president so far, ranging from trying to end birthright citizenship, which has run into trouble in courts, to just sending more troops to the border, ending asylum claims, that kind of thing. How do people feel about the range of those efforts? Are some things more popular than others?
Yeah, America's not a monolith.
Sure.
And Americans have, see the nuance. And so a supermajority percent of Americans, 87% of Americans, support the deportation of illegal immigrants who are also criminals. Indeed, that's where the administration is really focused. There's a lot of support for that. But when you start to deal with children or involve children, birthright citizenship, DACA sort of children and adjacent sort of segments, Americans do not support it. So once again, broad-based support for deporting, all the the criminals that are here illegally, but much more nuanced, less support for other sorts of deportations.
All right, and that nuance is important. Thank you for sharing
you.
your data with us. Cliff Young joining us from Ipsos polling. And I want to give a little reaction as well to some of this data and the figures we're seeing for the Trump administration so far from our political panel today. Rick Davis with me, Stonecourt Capital partner and Republican strategist, alongside Democratic strategist Caitlin Legacki. Rick, Cliff just told me President Trump's in a pretty good place when it comes to his approval rating, at least early on. How long is he going to be able to hold on to it?
Yeah, I actually think it's kind of precarious. I was reading some of Cliff's data, and, Trump's got the weakest first 100-day numbers of any president going back to Dwight Eisenhower. I mean, by 20%. And so, yeah, I mean, it's the modern era. We're divided as a nation, but the least popular president at the time was 55%, was Bill Clinton in his first 100 days. So yeah, I mean, that's 10% higher than Trump. So, I mean, I think he is muscular. A lot of that coalition seems to be former Democrats. I think that it says as much about the Democratic Party as it does the Republican Party. But I can't imagine if he does what Cliff says, which is this might be his high point of his entire administration, then he's right back to where he basically was in 2017, which was, hovering in the low 40s, high 30s, which is right back where Biden was. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's too early to tell, but he's certainly getting a lot done in his first 100 days. And maybe strategies of recognition that this is as good as it's going to get, and why not go as quick as you can while you're still popular?
Well, and Caitlin, briefly, even if he's low for a just starting out president, he's still higher than the president's approval leaving office was in Joe Biden. How much of this is just a comparison game, the immediate comparison?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely what it is. We saw if this election was a referendum on anything, it was a referendum on the establishment and our institutions. And so what you're likely seeing is some measure of support for Donald Trump and Elon Musk coming in and promising to shake things up. I think where they have kind of blown this opportunity is that their initial, opening salvo is freezing government funding for essential programs. It is really, for lack of a better term, coming in and throat punching the opposition, which is not necessarily what the American people like to see. And so I think that I agree completely that this is probably a high point. And rather than trying to grow their coalition even further, it's clear that there's an agenda to punish opposition.
Her dog in the background is bothering my dog. So, Bloomberg, stop it. My dog's a hunting dog. It likes killing.
For federal government employees and buyouts, it's all part of this slimming down DOGE effort, and we'll get into that next right here on Balance of Power on video.
All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Please get the resveratrol. Resveratrol stacks really well with C60. I'll be talking about C60 shortly. It stacks well with NAD+ and ubiquinol. Resveratrol is an antioxidant. It'll soak up free radicals. It helps the mitochondrial health, so you'll have more ATP. ATP is really important for energy for your cells. In addition, resveratrol helps to get rid of cells that are in senescence. Senescence are cells that stop dividing because their telomere length has shortened. Now, once the telomere length shortens and it goes into senescence, it can't divide anymore. Now, sometimes these cells will go into apoptosis and die off. Sometimes they just sit there and accumulate toxins, accumulate garbage. You want to get rid of them. And then in tissues that can regenerate, that have adult stem cells, when you get rid of these senesced cells, it sends a a growth factor, a growth signal for those adult stem cells to divide and create new cells for that tissue. So you have tissues that can perform better. So you want to get rid of those senescent cells, get rid of those toxins that have been building up in the tissues. Resveratrol will help with that. In addition, resveratrol, again, is synergistic with C60. So you get the most benefits out of resveratrol when you stack it with things like NAD+ and C60 and other very strong antioxidants. I've been taking resveratrol for decades. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, take the resveratrol, make sure you stack it. Now, we've been talking about C60. C60 is a very potent antioxidant. It will soak up free radicals. It's in a lipid, it's in an oil because it's lipid soluble. You can get it in avocado oil, MCT coconut oil, or extra virgin olive oil. The one I have in my hand is MCT coconut oil. You take a teaspoon a day. I take a teaspoon a day. So every day, I'll soak up those free radicals and reduce the cellular stress, reduce the tissue stress. And when you do that, your cells and your tissues perform better. When they perform better, that means your organs are going to be performing better. Your glands and your endocrine system and your immune system are going to perform better. And over time, what you're going to see is that your energy levels are up because you have better mitochondrial health, your ATP is increased, and you are slowly healing your body, and you're noticing that your body is aging slower. Take it every day. There's compound effects over year, and stack it with the other supplements that I've been talking about, especially the resveratrol, but not just stack it with the resveratrol. Remember the 4-pillar system, the core that I've been talking about. Max 35, C60, turmeric, ashwagandha, and lignans, and Boomer Boost. It's a very strong combo to really boost up the health of your body. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60. You can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. I take a teaspoon a day. If you work out, take it before your workout, and you'll notice that you recover quicker. In addition, for the best absorption, take it on an empty stomach. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the C60 either in a 2-ounce, 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off. And lastly, Boomer Boost. Like I was saying about the pillars, the last pillar of the core is Boomer Boost. Why? It improves your energy levels and your metabolism. It speeds that up. When you have more energy, your body will perform better. In the geriatric years, your energy starts to decline. Your mitochondrial health starts to decline. Your immune system starts to decline. It all starts with energy. You look at someone that's young, they have lots of energy. They have to burn it all off because they're running around. You get a new dog, it has to run around because it has lots of energy. And you look at an old dog or someone that's in their geriatric years, they sit in a chair, right? Because they don't have any energy. It's about energy levels and soaking up free radicals. Really important. So Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients. Here's the supplement profile. Read the label on my website in detail. Take this once a day, either breakfast or for lunch. There's a big scooper. This is a powder. You mix it with soft foods like hummus or yogurt. I mix it in hummus for my lunch. And what you do is you take it once a day. You can also mix it with filtered water. Some people mix it with milk. It's up to you. But take it once a day, and this is your meal for the day, or for breakfast or for lunch. All right. Obviously, you're going to have dinner and all that, but the thing is that use it as a meal for your breakfast or for your lunch, and you'll lose weight, and you're going to control your blood glucose levels. You're going to gain energy. You're going to sleep better because you have nutrients that actually help with the sleep cycle. But not just that, it will help with your cardiovascular health, your brain health, your strength and your muscles. boost up your energy levels and your metabolism and bring down inflammation. You couple this with the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley, and you really supercharge the superfood. All right, because the barley is a protein. Take a small, a few small scoops, add it with the Boomer Boost. Take that once a day for breakfast or for lunch, and voila, you really have supercharged your daily routine. All right, so take the Boomer Boost, take it with, you can take it separately, but it works better with either the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley. The differences between the two barleys, if you want to focus more on the strength side of this and you're working out and you want to gain muscle and strength, taking the Boomer Boost with the gladiator barley will give you the most benefits, and you'll be able to control your A1C levels more. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, take the Boomer Boost, add it with the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley. I have a longevity boost box where you get Boomer Boost and your choice of gladiator or heirloom barley at a discount within the longevity boost box. Or you can buy them separately, just take the boost or just take the barley, it's up to you, but you get the most bang for your buck if you get the Boomer Boost and the barley together, mix them, and you're really supercharging your health. I have given you lots of ways to stack at different price points, ways to save money, ways to get healthy. It's up to you to do it. It's a holistic approach and it works. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. If you buy a longevity box or an anti-aging box, you also get a built-in discount because what's in the box is cheaper than getting the individual items. All right, and this is my way of trying to get you healthy. All right, I've told you what I do. I set up different price points for people and different systems to target. It's up to you to get healthy. You got all the information you need. Thank you for listening. Please help support my work by going to my store, getting the products. Help support the work by donating. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, or you can be a paid member to my Patreon channel. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.